Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnackit.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnackit.sbnation.com.
This is the Black Gold Banneret Podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Sharon and Eric Lopez.
Welcome to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. My name is Jeff Sharon. We have got a full house because, ladies and gentlemen of Night Nation, it is finally here. This is the moment that Murph dreams about, right? It's our 2022 Black and Gold Banneret Postseason Awards nomination show. Along with me, 4 of our main crew. All right, Eric Lopez is here. Kyle Nash is here. Stat Boy Drew Glukov is here. Bryson Turner's here. And we have got a bunch of awards to go through. Player of the Year, Coaches of the Year, moments, games, you name it. It's a long show. Buckle up. We're going to roll with it. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started here because I want to dive in right away, just like the Oscars. Okay, let's dive into that first set of awards right away. Women's Team Coach of the Year. What a year it's been for UCF women's sports. Now, here's how we're gonna do this. We're gonna give out the nominations, have a quick discussion about each of them. Then we are going to, over the course of the next couple weeks, we're going to do a post on the site for each award. You get to vote. Each of us gets a vote on the Black and Gold Banneret staff. And then whoever wins the fan poll counts for 1 vote. And in the event of a tie, the win goes to the fan vote. Do you see what I mean by that?
I see what you did.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, you have power.
You matter.
Yes, you do matter. Why do I do that like that? Why do we do this like this? Because all you guys end up voting for football people anyway. And UCF is about more than just football. All right. So I'm just being honest with you right up front. All right. So let's dive in. Women's Team Coach of the Year. We have 5 nominees to choose from. Number 1, Coach Abe. Yes, she pieced out to Georgia, but she leaves UCF the most successful women's basketball coach of all time in terms of winning. Took UCF to the NCAA tournament where they just barely missed out on the Sweet 16. Won UCF's first double in conference since the A Sundays. Nominee number 2, Cindy Ball Malone. Softball. Almost 50 wins this year. Got to the NCAA Super Regionals. Hosted a regional for the first time ever. Todd Dagenet, head coach UCF women's volleyball. Another conference championship. Their 4th consecutive one. All right. Also made it to the second round of the NCAAs. Dana Boone, head coach of UCF women's track and field. Double conference championship, indoor and outdoor. National accolades all over the place. And Emily Marin, women's golf, who took her team to the NCAAs yet again, just a model of consistency for UCF sports. We will start with Eric Lopez. Eric, give me your takes on the field. Who would you vote for?
This is going to be a theme on this show. The women's sports this year was through the roof, probably historic. Yep. I mean, there are 2 coaches that made the NCAA tournament this year, and Emily Marin and Brian Kanyenko. They didn't even make it. That's how deep this women's, all the women's sports categories are going to be this year. So all of them in a normal year would win. That being said, only one of them had a historic season that led her team to the Sweet 16, round of 16 Super Regional, how you want to frame it, for the first time in program history. Hosted a regional for the first time in program history. Second most wins with 49 and finished the highest ranking program history to finish the season at 14. That's Cindy Ball Malone, UCF softball. I think she just won National Coach of the Year. That's my choice.
Kyle, we'll go with you. Your quick take.
Well, absolutely predictable from my guy, Elo. No shocks there. And listen, I make that joke and I take that shot in the interest of the fake angst that I always do to bring the good radio here.
What me and Kyle do.
That's right. On the Black and Gold Banneret and all that. But listen, I agree 100% that the women's softball team program, whatever you want to call it, had a fantastic and historic year. That's undeniable. And frankly, the tragedy is that these two coaches have to face each other in the same year as such. However, what I think is different about the women's team and all they did, getting higher in the NCAA tournament than any other team before it, than any other thing that's gone on, so many first conference title, conference tournament, and getting to a place where they won the first NCAA tournament game in the history. But at the end of the day, the juggernaut that is Connecticut should have been beat if it weren't for foul shots. And Gino Auriemma said himself that he himself was forever changed at the end of the day. I don't know that the same happens if UCF softball team runs into an Oklahoma, let's say.
I mean, we did.
How'd that go?
We lost in the Sweet 16.
So at the end of the day, because Jeff subtly, not so subtly, kind of being a beep about it, telling me to wrap up, I don't see how you don't pick Abe here. Granted, she left, and I'm sure fans will feel bad about that.
Oh.
But even when you consider the facilities that one has versus the other, you got to admit the women's basketball facilities here could probably use even more improvement than the softball group does. They weren't respected the way the women's softball team was, and they're doing more with less. Granted, the players were all fantastic in both sports. At the end of the day, Abe had a tougher road. I'm sorry.
Real quick, Drew.
Now that these two very biased people are out of the way, since they each cover those respective sports, let's give someone who doesn't cover either. I'm going to be quick. I'm going with softball on this one. When you look at the number 16 national seed, that basically equates to the number 4 seed in the NCAA tournament, which is way higher than what the UCF women's basketball achieved. Now, that's not to take away from what they did, because they both did firsts. Winning the first regional ever at UCF, winning the first NCAA tournament game ever at UCF. Those are big things. However, when you look at the whole build of work, the regular season, the postseason tournament into the NCAA tournament, I gotta go with softball on this one. And Kyle, I gotta disagree with about facilities. Have you been to the softball field? Do you know where Eric Lopez has to be sometimes to work these games? There's facility problems at softball that need to be worked out.
I'm not saying it's great.
At least in basketball, they have the ability to play, in the same arena as the men's team. So I got to go. I've got to go with softball on this one.
Bryson?
Well, first of all, I need to give my just dues to Dana Boone, because she managed to get the 2 conference championships for track when they've only had 1 indoor title since 2013, which was the last time they had the double. She also got coaching staff of the year in both conference meets. Under normal circumstances, gentlemen, she would be a coach of the year, but this is not a normal year. Women's sports, the 50th anniversary of Title IX has absolutely gone off this year. And so as much as I loved what Coach Abe did this year, there's only one coach in this category that actually got a National Coach of the Year award, the first time for a UCF coach that isn't football, and that is Cindy Ball Malone. So I think that I have to go with the national consensus here. And while I have to give my just dues to Dana Boone, Dot Tajne, and Emily Marin for great years,
oh yeah,
I have to go with Ball Malone on this.
I agree with. Go ahead, Drew.
I was saying, isn't it crazy that Todd Dagenet, who won the conference 4 years in a row, isn't even in the top 2 at this point?
Right.
I know. I'm going to, and I'll speak to his accolades as well. That program just keeps on chugging. Yet again, a 4th consecutive conference championship, and coming up, going to 5 sets, nearly making the Sweet 16 themselves. A couple things go differently in that 5th set against UCLA and Pauley Pavilion, and I think it's a much closer bit between him and Cindy Ball Malone. I think personally, for my money, Cindy gets the vote because of what she did. I think that it really is between her and Coach Abe at this point. And given how events sort of worked out, I think Cindy will probably get the nod. But again, you will get to choose, ladies and gentlemen. Men's team coach of the year. We have 3 nominees on this one. Bryce Waller, men's golf, another solid year for UCF men's golf. Greg Lovelady, baseball, once again, shepherded his team through a very difficult season, I thought, in the toward the very end. It's as he worked his pitching staff to get his team in a position to where they had a shot on semifinal Saturday in the American. Gus Malzahn, head coach of UCF football, who and I'll start the takes on this one. Gus, I thought I think would get my vote here because of the fact that not just in his first year at UCF, all he's done, not just off the field, but certainly not just on the field, but off the field in terms of stepping up UCF's recruiting, but also the fact that after that Louisville game, that disastrous end of a game where you didn't just lose the game, you lost basically half of your all-conference level performing players, including your all-star quarterback in Dylan Gabriel, and still managed to MacGyver this team to a 9-win season and a victory over the Florida Gators in a bowl game, first ever victory over Florida in school history. I think he gets the nod here to this one. And I want to belatedly throw in also Scott Calabrese for men's soccer, who managed to shepherd his team to within one late goal of an American Athletic Conference championship. Bryson, I want to start with you.
I mean, if we're going to be honest here, this is going to be a toss-up between Gus Malzahn and Greg Lovely. Now, I know the fans are going to vote Gus, and I completely understand why, especially considering that he himself was injured this year, and he still kept going.
Yeah, I forgot about that part.
I know. It's been a year, hasn't it? But the thing is that the story of Lovelady and Malzahn's teams are both very similar, where they've had to fight injuries that are honestly much more than average that a team would have to still go on to have a very respectable season. So for me, I covered him, so I will admit a little biased here. But again, like I said, Malzahn and Lovely are basically the same, have had the same season. So I think it's a toss-up either way. But I'm going to go to bat for Coach Lovelady because I think that that there is much more of a bounce back that that baseball had to do. They had to deal with injuries to not only their ace pitcher, but their second pitcher in Hunter Patterson, Nick Romano, and much more. So I just think that the big bounce back for Lovelady is why he deserves it.
Kyle?
Go to bat for Lovelady. I see what you did there, Bryson. You're too young for dad jokes, but that was a good one. At the end of the day, you make a great point that they essentially had very similar years. At the end of the day, I got to take Malzahn and call me biased all you want for, all my football paraphernalia back here. But at the end of the day, they were able to put themselves in a position to elevate the program despite all of that to another level nationally. At the end of the day, being able to be the first in the state of Florida to get to a bowl game and also do what they did in the Gasparilla Bowl. I got Gus.
Drew?
I also have Gus, and I'll preface, I do have a bias there because I do cover football. But I mean, much to what Kyle said, I mean, the fact that this team could have laid down and died behind a freshman quarterback, they did not. They rallied and excelled. I mean, a 9-win season, even with a decent team, is nothing to really stuff at. You're just on the fringe of double digits. That's a good season. The bowl game wasn't great, but that's just what your bowl contracts are. So, I mean, you really can't fault on that. But as Herm Edwards says, you play to win the game, and they've won the game. Not only did they win the game, but they looked really good winning the game. Like they second half of that game, they were firmly in control. So I got to give Malzahn on that because it all comes down originally to coaching. If the coaches don't make the players buy in, you can be the most talented team in the world, a la the 2015 UCF football team. You can have all the talent in the world. No coaching, you're not going to win.
Lopez, last word.
Lovelady and Gus had exactly the same year. The difference is Gus gets the trump card because of the Florida win. Simple as that.
Boom.
There you go. One point about Gus, let's not forget the Louisville back-to-back and Louisville Navy back-to-back, basically one play away in both games from winning both of them. Mm-hmm. From winning both of them. So those are our male or our men's team coach of the year nominations: Gus Malzahn, Greg Lovelady, Bryce Waller, and Scott Calabrese. Let's drop it over to the assistants. They do not get enough credit, but we do here on the Black and Gold Banneret. Women's assistant coach of the year, Glenn Smith for women's track and field, Whitney Jones in softball, Jenny Maurer in volleyball, Tani Valerio in women's basketball, and then last but not least for women's soccer, Chris Cummings, the goalkeeper coach for women's soccer. Let's go ahead and start with Bryson. I want to tell us about Glenn Smith and what Glenn was able to do for track and field.
All right, so Glenn Smith was brought on to be the field coach, handling the jumps and throws and heptathletes. Dana Boone told me in our interview after she got back from Eugene that he was the primarily responsible for bringing Brittany Floyd to UCF from UAB, where she proceeded to break the program heptathlon record that has stood for 19 years. We'll talk a little more about that later. He also brought Ashera Collins back to Oregon, where she improved on her previous mark and was almost a second-team All-American. And then he also coached Adrienne Adams, who broke the program discus throw record that has stood since 2010. So he brought more athletes with him to nationals, and all of them either improved or got school records. That's why I'm talking about Glenn there.
Eric Lopez, tell us about Whitney Jones and the contribution Whitney made to softball.
She helped get Jada Cody to be an All-American, have the offensive balance with speed and power and efficiency, top to bottom, 1 to 9. I think that was a big piece of her for as far as the UCF offense, and really helped them to win the conference and get to the Oster Regional is a big part, with Cody as the All-American. This is the second All-American in the history of the program, the first since as a hitter. So I think that's the big contributions that Whitney, and allowed Cindy Ball-Malone to handle the pitching by herself. Remember, last year Cindy would run the offense and some pitching. Now she's focused all on pitching because she hands it over to Whitney.
Kyle, Tani Valerio and the contribution she made to women's basketball. She won this award last year.
Yeah, and rightfully so. Listen, she won the award plenty last year, and then to take what was all there from the COVID year and to somehow find a way to even get more lift out of a super talented group. Basically, everybody except for maybe Tay Sanders had better numbers this year than last year, and Tay was still a big part of what was going on with the team overall. There's a reason why there's 2 women's basketball assistant coaches on the list, by the way. Are we doing votes yet, or?
Well, I want this to be a little bit more informational. So if you want to vote for her, go ahead.
Now, at the end of the day, I'd still vote for Whitney Jones because of the youth, and as you say earlier, Eric, the way she was able to free up Ball-Malone to do what it is she did. I'm also above bias, just kidding. But there was still a lot to be said for how much the players on the women's basketball team elevated a piece of their game. Coach Abe talked about it basically after every game in the post-conference about how much their identity was improved and even changed in some ways by on the fact that they built from that foundation the previous year.
Real quick, as we get to the other 2, I wanted to talk about Chris Cummings for women's soccer, the goalkeeper coach, recruiting coordinator, Coach Caroline Delisle to a fantastic year, AAC goalkeeper of the year, her first selection to the All-Conference American first team, 7 shutouts and 78 saves, a career high for Caroline under the tutelage of Chris. And then for Jenny Maurer for volleyball, basically the offensive coordinator for UCF volleyball and the recruiting coordinator for UCF volleyball. The job she did in recruiting this past year, I think has just been second to none. Because this team's had to fill some holes. And listen, there are teams that rebuild and there are teams that reload. Mm-hmm. And UCF volleyball has a habit of reloading. You don't win 4 consecutive conference championships, and you're not a favorite for a 5th one without reloading for recruiting. So Jenny Maurer is our 5th nominee. So those are our 5 nominees for Women's Assistant Coach of the Year: Glenn Smith, track and field; Whitney Jones, softball; Jenny Maurer, volleyball; Chris Cummings of women's soccer; and Tani Valerio of women's basketball. Men's Assistant Coach of the Year, we have 3 nominees in this category: Travis Williams, the defensive coordinator for football; Ted Tom, the hitting coach for UCF baseball; and Paul Souders of men's soccer. Travis Williams, Eric Lopez, Tell me about what you thought the major contribution he made to UCF this year. And Drew, I want to get your thoughts on Travis as well, since you guys both covered football.
I mean, Drew, I think you would agree. Travis Williams took a defense that was atrocious prior to his arrival with, quite frankly, not great talent of a roster, and turned them into really the strength of the team by the end of the year, won them some big games, got them bowl eligible. To me, Drew, Travis Williams, I thought, exceeded my expectations.
Absolutely. Not only did he excel on the field, but he also excelled off the field, bringing this team together. As we know, when coaching regimes change, things can be a little chaotic. And he really rose to the occasion of really bringing this team together. And I think that's what really helped, lead towards that 9-win season. Because as we know, if the coaching isn't there, you hit that wall of adversity, you're going to crumble. And they broke through the wall. And that really comes down to your coaching staff. T. Will, defensive coordinator, obviously second man in the room at that point, did an excellent job. They were just outside the top 50 in defensive stats, which if you look at last year is a huge, huge upgrade.
And don't forget how young he is too, by the way, Drew, not for nothing.
Oh yeah. He's got a big career ahead of him, and it probably won't be at UCF. Someone's going to hire him as a head coach probably in the next few years.
Oh God, please not too soon. I love Coach Trav. Ted Tom, Ted Tom, head coach for UCF, assistant coach for UCF baseball, in charge of hitting Bryson Turner. Unsung hero, I thought, for that team, especially in the second half of the year, right?
Oh, yes, very much so. On May 25th, I did some calculations. Through the USF home series, the UCF team that was batting .276. Post USF until May 25th, they were hitting .292. When pitchers like Connor Stain and Hunter Patterson went down and the pitching staff was in disarray, it was the batting, who didn't have the best start to the year, that came in and absolutely saved their behinds. And all the credit in the world has to go to Ted Tom for being able to improve the bats to get them to that point. So Travis Williams, of course, did an amazing job this season with the defense, but I'd be remiss if we don't mention Ted Tom for this award.
Paul Souders for UCF men's soccer. And Eric, I want your input on this one as well. This was a bit more of a struggle year for men's soccer because of some transition with the loss of Cal Jennings, but they were able to figure out that offense, I think, midway through the year. And he was a key part of getting guys like Luca Dorado to really develop and fill that hole that Cal Jennings left.
Correct. He led the goals there. Gino Vivi, and remember, UCF had question marks through about the goalkeeping because Yannick Ertl had graduated, so the offense had to pick up more of the slack. And Paul Souders was able to bring Nick Taylor in, a transfer out of SMU, which is a big part to that offense. So, what's funny? A few years from now, when we look back at these nominees, I think you're going to see a lot of future head coaches at that point. I mean, there's a lot of future head coaches on this list, on both women and men list.
That's why I like that we give props to the assistant coaches, because we are going to see these people have head jobs somewhere else. I don't know. You never know. Some of them may be head coaches at UCF again one day. But yeah, the UCF influence is spreading throughout the coaching world, and that's what we like to see. So there's your men's assistant coaches of the year. Alumni of the year. This is an award that goes to a UCF athlete who has performed above and beyond expectations for the previous year as a professional athlete in their given sport. We have four nominations. Gabe Davis, needs no introduction. Sean Johnson, NYCFC goalkeeper, won the MLS Cup. Matthew Wright, who worked his way into the NFL, fought his way onto an NFL roster with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and Matty Rogers. I'm going to defer to Kyle on this with Gabe Davis, because you cover both college and the NFL.
I do. Yeah. And with that in mind, listen, Gabe Davis definitely belongs in consideration for this list. Sure, he was great as an arguable pound for pound rookie of the year performance last year, but the fact that he was such a big part of that Buffalo Bill offense, we all know about Stephon Diggs. He was a great tertiary option, and sometimes based on injury, even a secondary option, one could possibly argue. And then, by the way, how big he was when they were almost, what was it, Drew, 30 seconds away from making it to the conference championship and battling the Chiefs. And unfortunately, Patrick Mahomes went all Patrick Mahomes, but Gabe Davis was a big part of that game and making an impact for what was nearly a Super Bowl team.
Drew?
I actually think Gabe Davis is overrated in this selection. And the reason why is
Whoa.
he had the Brandon Marshall Hawaii Bowl moment. Great receiver, but, was always overshadowed by someone else until he had that one game where he became unstoppable. Now, I think this is going to springboard to an excellent 2022 season. But if you look at his 2021 regular season, he actually went down. He didn't play as much. His yards per reception went down. His yards went down. His, targets and receptions were flat. He had one less touchdown.
He was battling through some injuries too. He
was.
Mm-hmm.
And
just checking.
You got to look at the whole body of work. But he had his Brandon Marshall Hawaii Bowl moment against Kansas City, where he was an unstoppable force of nature. And we can't, immediately, we can't eliminate that, but you got to look at the whole body of work. And I don't think Gabe Davis is the best guy, is the best person on this list.
No man in the history of the National Football League has caught 4 touchdowns in a playoff game except for Gabriel Davis. Eric Lopez, I want to talk about Sean Johnson because to me, he's the dark horse in this category. I know everyone's going to talk about Gabe and remember the game in Kansas City, but Sean is going to get my vote because he led NYCFC to the MLS Cup, that franchise's first MLS Cup. And you look at all the discussion around that team as they made their run in the playoffs, it all centered around Sean Johnson and how he was the heartbeat of that team. And we saw it in the final against Portland where he came up with the key stops in penalty kicks that gave NYCFC the championship.
There's no UCF alum right now in pro sports that's better than Sean Johnson. He's the best goalkeeper, in my opinion, in the MLS. He should be the goalkeeper for the United States team this World Cup coming up, except the U.S. national team is run by idiots, so he probably won't be. They'll make an excuse that he's too old or whatever. But he's tremendous. I think he is phenomenal and is right now should be the guy. I will throw out, though, Matthew Wright, to be a kicker. Okay, Kyle, I'm surprised you didn't, or Drew, I'm surprised neither one of you brought up Matthew Wright.
I was asked to do, Gabe. I can do plenty on.
Well, you covered Matthew Wright.
We did what we were asked.
All right, well, Kyle, you covered Matthew Wright. I mean, to be a kicker in the NFL is not easy because it's a week to week, right? You have one bad week, you could get cut. Matthew Wright's battled to be an NFL kicker.
And hey, that's after all the stuff that went down with Josh Lambo and him struggling so early. The Jags had a chance to win a game or be more competitive than them here and there and was failing. And then the pressure came. And the reason why you could argue the few wins they got under the shambles of disaster, that was the Urban Meyer regime. And I'm not including the end of the year because he's already gone by then, guys, was Matt Wright nailing a kick overseas for that first win. And then, of course, some other close moments. Guys, Matt Wright may not even be on the roster anymore in Jax, but he was huge to give fans something there in Jacksonville and making all of that happen.
He hit a 56-yarder this year and was 21 for 24 and was money from inside of 50, missed only one kick from inside 50 and was perfect from inside 40, 14 of 14 inside of 40. In fact, in his entire career, he's only missed 2 of his 3 misses have been from 50 plus his entire career.
Yeah, smaller sample size, but that's Vinatieri numbers.
That's can't argue with it. Andrew, you also mentioned Matty Rogers, and I wanted to and let's give Matty Rogers some props here, and I want Bryson to speak on Matty as well.
Okay, I guess I'll start first. Matty Rogers, Olympic weightlifter. She's actually my personal pick. One, unlike the others, which are team games, this is all on you. You are by yourself. You have no help, no nothing. This is strictly on you. You live and die based on how you do. And while she finished 6th in the Olympics, she also medaled 3 different events. She was silver in the World Championships. She hit a gold in the Santo Domingo, which was it's technically the 2020, but it was done in 2021. And then in Ecuador, she silvered again. So I mean, that's not easy to do on an international level, and she did it. And I think that stands out. Sean Johnson, very close second for me, because he is one of the gold standards of MLS goalkeeping. But I think Rogers really rose up.
Yeah.
Bryson, you did a lot of coverage on Maddie during the Olympics.
Yes, I know. It sucks because the Olympics literally happened right after last year's bannies. So I feel I want to make sure that we give Maddie Rogers her due, because hers was a lot further back in time than the other ones that we're talking about. But to quote her, I have this article up on teamusa.org right now. She quoted, "I just happened to have the worst panic attack ever at the wrong time on the biggest stage. I could not get it back together." In a year where athlete mental health has been a huge theme, but whether it's in the Olympics or on the collegiate level, Maddie Rogers gives a personal UCF tie to that discussion. And the fact that even while she was undergoing that, she still managed to get 6th in the Olympics. She still managed to get another weight up during that entire thing. And the emotion that she had on her face was palpable. So Maddie has to be given her just dues, even if Sean Johnson also makes a very good case.
And a real quick thought here, Jeff, like the fact that we got alums and this alum category is packed the way it is says a hell of a lot for UCF in general, not for nothing.
Yeah. 4 alumni of the year candidates: Gabe Davis of football, Sean Johnson of soccer, Matthew Wright of football, and Maddie Rogers in weightlifting. All right, let's do one more and then we're going to take a break. Okay. We're going to do, let's do 2 more. All right. We're going to do the breakout athlete of the year. This award goes to an athlete who, from one year to the next, to this past year, made a tremendous leap in terms of their performance and ability. And we have 5 nominees for Women's Breakout Athlete of the Year: Jada Cody of softball, Amber Olsen of volleyball, Destiny Thomas of women's basketball, Latasha Smith of track, and Justine Molina of softball. I want to start with Eric Lopez and the 2 softball athletes who were nominated, Jada Cody and Justine Molina. Go ahead, Eric.
Start with Molina. She was the defensive player of the year in the American, could go down as the greatest defensive infielder in UCF softball history. Always steady, had the best bat in the month of April, clutch. And then Jada Cody fairly simply had the greatest offensive season that any UCF softball players had since Stephanie Best played. And that was a few years back, say, 02 to 05 when Best played here. She broke Best's 19-year record of RBI record and became the second All-American at UCF. Pretty historic stuff. These 2 big parts of the success.
And broke that record in fewer games, if I'm not mistaken.
Much fewer games, lesser games. They played way more games back in the day. In 05, they had double headers and things. So she broke it by like about 10 games.
I want to shout out to Amber Olsen, the setter, of course, who emerged over the last few years. It's not that I think that it's not so much that she made a big leap this year, but it's that she really took control of a team that likes to run that 6-2 that Todd Dagenais has done for several years. Well, this year she took over as the primary setter for UCF volleyball and moved her way up the all-time standings, added a little bit of attacking to her repertoire as well. But this particular year, especially on defense, I thought she really diversified her game. Obviously, it's a harder job than you think when you're setting up players like McKenna Melville all over the place. But remember, she's 4th all-time in career assists, and she's got 1 more year to go as well. She may very well end up being coming pretty close to being the all-time leader at UCF in assists when all is said and done. So Amber Olsen, once again, getting the job done for UCF volleyball in another championship season. Bryson, tell me more about Latasha Smith, track and field.
I will die on this hill. The only reason that we did not see Latasha Smith in Eugene was because Dana told us that there was an illness among the 400-meter relay team, which includes Latasha Smith. We would have seen her in Eugene had that not happened, because she managed to take both the indoor and the outdoor 400-meter school records. The indoor record has stood since 2016. She beat it by about half a second. And then the outdoor record was set by Afia Charles in 2013. And Latasha Smith went and beat that by about 0.4 of a second. Absolutely swept both of the both 400-meter indoor and outdoor. And she was part of the 4x400-meter relay team that also took the school record, the outdoor one. And Boone has talked about how good that unit is, and Latasha Smith is a big part of that, a reason why.
Kyle, I know you've been waiting to talk about Destiny Thomas, and even though she is leaving, as well as many other players for UCF women's basketball, as they make their transition to a different coaching staff, she really stepped it up this year, didn't she?
Oh, there's no question. And Jeff, look at what's going on that starting lineup. First and foremost, the only underclassman on it, one Destiny Thomas. And let's put it this way. We all know about Masni Kama and her ability to battle down low. We know about Brittany Buckets, Brittany Smith doing her thing, fighting and being finesse all its own. Desto isn't really one of a loud personality. Heck, she doesn't even have a social media account on Twitter, okay? But at the end of the day, what she does is grab rebounds, and then all of a sudden, if she gets hot, she'll be able to do putbacks for offensive rebounds and get double digits. But Jeff, in this year, she also developed an outside shot. In one of her 3 triple doubles, she hit at least 3 from the outside range there. Looked really great doing it. Versatility, being a third option of somebody who can be a threat to score and also grab rebounds, and why that post game was so important to free up Diamond Battles to do what she did on the outside. And just what a performance in what she was able to do, elevate her offensive skill to the point where she's out there with 5th year and 4th years and juniors and just doing a great job.
So we have 5 nominees: Jada Cody of softball, Justine Molina of softball, Amber Olsen of volleyball, Destiny Thomas women's basketball, Latasha Smith track and field. Last one before we go to a break. Men's breakout athlete of the year. 4 nominees: Ryan O'Keefe of football, Noah Orlando of baseball, Teddy T-Tack men's golf, Andrew Sundin of baseball. I want to start with Ryan O'Keefe, and I want to defer to Eric and Drew on this one. You know, he really, all the numbers aside, he was the safety valve for Mikey Keene when Dylan Gabriel went down, and Gus Malzahn had to hand the keys of his offense to a true freshman quarterback. He needed somebody who could be his safety blanket, and that was Ryan O'Keefe. And it happened not just in that Gasparilla Bowl performance that we all know and remember, but throughout the season.
Well, let's go a little bit further back. Spring game of 2021, and if you recall, I was talking about how Ryan O'Keefe was the star of the offense on the wide receiving side. At that time, everyone thought, Jane Robinson was going to be Jay Flash was going to be the guy. He struggled with the setup, and O'Keefe just took the ball and ran. Look at the numbers: team leader in receiving, team leader in yards from scrimmage, the only guy with 1,000 yards from scrimmage, 4th in rushing. I mean, he did it all. I mean, he averaged 17 yards a carry, and he had 16 carries. I mean, so it wasn't like he wasn't utilized all that much. He did everything. Not only was he the safety valve, but he became the slash. I mean, he was just all over the place, doing his rendition of Otis Anderson. That versatility, compared to his first year where he was 391 yards and 3 touchdowns, turned into 812 yards, 7 touchdowns. He went from 0 to 274 yards in rushing. And because he had no rushing before, under 400 yards total offense, over 1,000 yards in 2021, upped his touchdowns. He's by far the most valuable player on that UCF offense.
Let's go to baseball. And Bryson, I want to defer to you on both Noah Orlando and Andrew Sundin. You covered them both extensively. What's the case for the 2 of those guys?
All right. So Noah Orlando is on the more year by year.
For the city!
Yeah, yes. So last season, Noah Orlando only started 11 games, had about a 111 batting average. He didn't really get a lot of playing time just because there was so much going on in the infield, and Alex Freeland took his original spot of shortstop. This season, however, Noah Orlando had 177 at bats, played in over 50 games, and he hit 322. Let me say that again. He went from starting 30 games and hitting 111, playing in 30 games and hitting 111 to playing in over 50 games and hitting 322. That is insane. It's an insane improvement right there. In addition, he also filled in valiantly for Alex Freeland when he had his wrist injury late in the season. Freeland himself even said that he did a great job filling in for him. So in his last season in a program that he's been in for so long, absolutely excellent performance out of Noah Orlando. Now, if you want to look at a single season, you want to look at Andrew Sundin. Andrew Sundin or Sunny D has definitely been one of the breakout stories on this team. Lovelady said that, he wasn't really anything special in the fall, and saying that he was kind of still getting used to the college life as a true freshman. But through the holiday break, he said he got his act together, and then once Riley Wash ended up hurting his finger, he ended up being pushed into service as the catcher, and he absolutely went off, getting hit after hit. I'm looking at the stats right now, and even in his early games when he didn't get a hit, he still had an RBI, and he got hit by a pitch. He started playing in February and started playing regularly in March. He did not even get a walk until May 14th. That is a base on balls until May 14th. So I think Sundin, he's been a really big breakout story from this team on a single season standpoint. And so if you want to look at it from that standpoint, Sunny D is a perfect example of what this award entails. It honestly could go to either one of them, depending on what your definition of a breakout is.
Men's golf, Teddy Titak, a senior from Slovakia, who was probably the top contributor, or certainly one of the top contributors for UCF men's golf, along with right behind Johnny Travali. As a senior, this past year, 8 tournaments, scoring average of 71.88, second on the team, and really moved nicely into that number 2 slot in that rotation for head coach Bryce Waller and UCF, moving up his season scoring average from 74.17 last season to 71.88. Can't beat that. Had a 54 hole at the Hartford Hawks Invitational of -8, 1 top 5, 2 top 10s, 3 top 20s, and unanimous all AAC conference selection. So there's your nominees for Breakout Athlete of the Year on the men's side: Ryan O'Keefe, Noah Orlando, Andrew Sundin, Teddy Titak. We're going to take a quick break. I know we're trying to move. We got a lot of awards that we got to get to still. When we come back, we're going to do a few more individual awards. Then we're going to get to the fun ones, which is the teams and the moments and the games that are going to be a lot of fun for us to relive. Stick around. I'll be right back. It's the Black Gold Banneret Podcast. Back after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Full house on hand for our 2022 Black and Gold Banneret Award nomination show. I'm Jeff Sharon. We got Eric Lopez. We got Drew Glukoff. We got Kyle Nash. We got Bryson Turner. Let's roll on. We got a few more individual awards that we're going to send out the nominations for. Remember, folks, you will be able to vote for these over the next couple weeks on our site, blackandgoldbanneret.com. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, UCF Banneret_SBN, for when these awards each count. We're going to release 2 a day. Fans, remember, you get to vote on these awards. Your winners will count as 1 vote, and you will be the tiebreaker vote. In the event of a tie, each of us on the staff will have a vote as well. All right. So let's move on with some more individual awards. Senior of the Year, we have men's and women's. This is not necessarily somebody who was the greatest performer of the year, although they may have been, but was a key senior leader, somebody who at the end of their career really stepped it up and was admired by the end of the season. We'll start with the men. Cole Schneider for football, Noah Orlando for baseball, Teddy T-Tack for men's golf, Mauricio Villalobos for men's soccer. Now, we talked a little bit earlier, just before the break, about what Teddy T-Tack and Noah Orlando did for their respective sports, so we'll keep them up there. But let's talk about Mauricio Villalobos, Eric Lopez, men's soccer. Once again, this was a bit of a transitional year for them, and they came so close to making the NCAAs as the conference champion. And Mauricio, I thought, was a key part of that.
He was a captain. He was a guy that always spoke to the media, wins or losses. And there were some tough losses in particular this year. But you mentioned it. This is a guy that's part of a group that won 2 conference championships, 2 Sweet 16 runs in a row, 19 and, of course, in 21. So the stats don't tell the story about him. His legacy will live there as part of this great run that UCF men's soccer is under.
Cole Schneider, I'm going to defer to Kyle and Drew both on this one. By the way, a game-winning goal against SMU for Mauricio as well earlier this year. But you guys have both been tooting Cole's horn all throughout the year, in both of your journeys of covering UCF football. How key was he as a senior, not just, on the field, but off the field as well? Kyle, I'll start with you.
I mean, how close we might have been to pick Sam Jackson had he played another year. But listen, take nothing away from Cole. I think even Drew will agree his versatility on the offensive line, and talking to him in the interview we had a few months back here on the Black and Gold Banneret podcast, you knew the personality he was to learn anything and do anything he could for the squad. When Matt Lee got hurt, the great talent he is, arguably the best player at his position on the offense, Cole Schneider filled the gap nicely to make sure he had time to recover, and his leadership efforts helped make that line a thing. And Drew, I think you'll agree he was a key aspect of the run blocking that took place and made the difference in that Gasparilla Bowl, right?
Oh, absolutely. He may not be the best overall player, but I mean, his versatility cannot be, discounted. Matt Lee, not only did he start one game at center, but he had to spell Matt Lee a few times during the year when Matt was just too beat up to play and they had to pull him out. But I mean, he earned accolades. He was, honorable mention on all AAC from the league coaches. He got second team from Pro Football Focus, third team from Phil Steele. He played in the Hula Bowl, at UCF. He was, he had a lot of action, and the fact that he's out there, you can see it. That helps build, because as you know, Kyle, stat numbers with offensive line, you can't really, the only thing you can really, stat them for is how other players excel.
Indeed.
And we talked about how strong the running game is. You had 2 players over 700 yards with Richardson and Bowser. That doesn't happen without explosiveness at the line. And, you're a guard mostly. So you got to open the working on the ones and the 3 hold. Without that, you've got no inside run game. And that's what Isaiah Bowser was known for. So obviously he played a big role in that.
And hey, that's the reason why he's wearing cheese colored clothes up in Green Bay last I heard in OTAs.
All right. Well, you got your 4 nominees right there. Teddy T-Tack for men's golf, Noah Orlando for baseball, for men's senior of the year, along with Cole Schneider of football and Mauricio Villalobos of men's soccer. Women's senior of the year, we have 5 nominees in this category from 3 different sports. We have 2 for softball, 2 for volleyball, and 1 for women's basketball. Masani Kaba for women's basketball. The 2 for volleyball, Anne-Marie Watson and Narissa Moravik, and softball, Gianna Mancha and Denali Shapaker. I want to start with Kyle and Masani Kaba and the job that she did this year as UCF's best post player. I thought, even though she didn't win an award, she was still the starter on the team and got herself a look in the WNBA for her efforts, particularly in her senior year.
In Chicago, absolutely. I don't think she's still on the roster, but she did get that look. And hey, by the way, I like the point you make about her versatility, Jeff. Maybe she didn't win an award, but she did get her 1,000th point in this season on her way out as a swan song. And listen, as versatility goes, the mix of pure brute strength and grit, maybe not as strong as Destiny Thomas, but better shooter, and maybe not as graceful as Brittany Buckets, Brittany Smith, but a lot more of a battler and a leader on the team. And listen, she was fazed by nothing. When things got hot, a lot of times Masni Kamba would get in the heads of her opponent by maybe jawing with them, maybe like you like to see from CJ Walker sometimes, Jeff, on the men's side, and doing that sort of thing to intimidate the other side, to show the Gina Oriema's squads out there in Connecticut or anybody else who is posing a threat that they will not be denied, and they will try to out physical you if they cannot outshoot you. As Coach Abe used to put it, pretty ball may not be their style, and the tip of that spear was Masni Kamba to bring that physicality regardless of what Diamond Battles did on the stat sheet.
Eric Lopez, we have two softball players on this roster, which makes it always hard to choose between the two because I always tend to think that they might steal votes from one another. Gianna Mancha in the circle, Denali Schappacher at the plate and in the field. How significant were they to this team that made the Super Regionals?
Very significant. Gianna was an all-region player, the ace of this team, continuing the legacy of great UCF pitchers through a couple of no-hitters. In fact, she had 3 no-hitters for her career, which only Kime, Turnier, Audis have done as far as having multiple no-hitters. So you're in great company there. And then you have Denali Schappacher, who's in the top 10 in every significant offensive category in the history of this program. 200-plus hits in her career. Right field armed, all conference performer, great batting. It can hit small ball, can get on base, great on base player. 2 big part leaders on this team in helping their success and having success. Gianna has been successful everywhere she's played, and Schappacher really a great run. And she'll still be at UCF, by the way, working at the UCF Sports Medicine Department.
Yeah, I just saw that she's going to be interning there, and obviously working with softball. So I just saw that came down this past week. We wanted to give shout outs to as well 2 volleyball players on this list. Anne-Marie Watson in her 5th and final year, of course, the Oviedo native who spent all these seasons, on the other side of McKenna Miller, was sort of an unsung hero, but really came into her own this past year. AVCA all region, 306 kills, 44 digs, 130 blocks. Just a remarkable year. I highly encourage everyone to read Bryson's feature on her. Haggerty High School graduate Bryson Turner talking to Haggerty High School graduate Anne-Marie Watson. And then Narissa Moravec, who finished among the UCF's leaders all time in blocks. And again, you want to talk about unsung hero. Didn't always put up, huge numbers, but she was a human wall up front for UCF. Led the conference this past year with 1.34 blocks per set in all 34 matches, all conference second team, 141 kills, and just a remarkable career for Narissa Moravec as she finished up her time at UCF. One other note about Anne-Marie Watson, too, that Bryson just dropped me. Finishes top 10 all time in kills and blocks at UCF. Just a remarkable job by her. So there's your nominees for Women's Senior of the Year: Gianna Munch and Denali Schappacher of softball, Anne-Marie Watson, Narissa Moravec of volleyball, and Masni Kamba women's basketball. Let's move to the youngsters. Freshman of the Year. We start with the women. Softball, Ashley Griffin and Michaela Mercario. Women's tennis, Sophia Biolay. And women's golf, Zoe Alau. This is going to be, let's go again to Eric Lopez here for those 2 softball nominees. Listen, you are the softball guru, and you get plenty of airtime when that team makes the Super Regionals. Again, it's one thing to talk about the seniors that we talked about, right, Eric? It's another thing to talk about the freshman contributions that these players made in their first years in black and gold.
No doubt. And both play positions of very important positions. We start with Macario, the shortstop position. That was the big question. Who was going to be in the shortstop position? And for a freshman to take over and shine like Macario did, it was fitting that she would make the last catch to win the regional, winning freshman of the year in the American. And then Ashley Griffin catching. Carissa Ornella's transferred to Oregon. Who's going to be behind the plate? Well, Jada Cody's catching Gianna Mancha. Who's catching the other pitchers? Well, that's Ashley Griffin, and she grew as the year went on, not to mention big power in the middle of the lineup, had a great postseason, hit the walk-off against South Carolina in the regular season that turned the game around, helped in a winning. She really just grew, and I think has got a shot, has a great future at UCF. It'll be a big middle-of-the-bat lineup with Cody and Doherty for the next couple of years.
Bryson, I want to move to we haven't done much on women's tennis this year, but Sophia Biolay, in a year that that once again UCF made it to the NCAA tournament, and Sophia was a key player in that as a freshman. came in from Reims, France, and really contributed well for them.
Oh, yes. I remember when I talked to head coach Brian Kanyeko, and when we talked to him before the season started, and he told us that both freshmen that were in this year, Sophia and fellow freshman Noelle Sidanova, they arrived in the U.S. just before the season started because of the issues with getting passports because of COVID-19 pandemic backing things up. So they didn't have much time to warm up with the rest of the team. Yet Sophia Biole managed to go out and have a very impressive freshman year, going 9-5 in singles play. But what's majorly impressive is her doubles pair with Nandini Sharma, where Biole went 17-5 in doubles play on her own. But with Nandini Sharma, they went 16-4, absolutely dominated in the doubles play with women's tennis. And with all the women's athletes as big as they've been, Sophia Biole definitely was one of the top freshmen out there this season.
Another French woman, this time on the women's golf side, Zoe Allo. She's from Narbonne, France, and competed in all 11 events as a freshman this past year for UCF, hitting an average of 73, really good for a freshman. Dropped a minus 765 at the Bryan National Collegiate. That was her best performance of the year, and finished with 2 top 10s and 7 top 20s. Member of the French national team coming over to play for UCF. She's going to be fantastic as the years go by. So there's your 4 nominees for women's. We'll call it newcomer of the year, actually, because as we have Sophia Biole, Zoe Allo, Michaela Macario, and Ashley Griffin.
Jeff,
relatively new. Yeah, go ahead, Bryson.
I just wanted to mention that 65 that you mentioned that Zoe Allo got tied for the lowest 18-hole score in program history.
That's pretty good.
As a freshman. That was her second event. That was her second event too, wasn't it? The Bryan National.
Not bad. Yeah. So Zoe Allo. Wow. Men's freshman of the year. We have 4 nominees. 2 of them for baseball, Lex Boddicker and Andrew Sundin. 1 for men's basketball, Darius Johnson, and 1 for football, Mikey Keene. We'll start with Drew.
All right, let's talk Mikey Keene.
Let's talk about Mikey Keene.
Let's talk about Mikey Keene. He had to start after Dylan Gabriel got knocked down the very end of Louisville, so he obviously didn't play that. But this guy, true freshman, gets thrown into the fire and has to lead this team because there wasn't much else to work with. Joey Gatewood was more of a kind of a runner. And as we saw later, so was Parker Navarro. So Mikey Keene thrown into the fire. Let's see what he's done. Never lost at home. Won 6 out of his last 7 games, and even said that the game started slowing down for him, and his play showed. He had 1 real bad dud of a game against Memphis that UCF still won. But you go after the Temple game in the end of October, so you had 2 more months. He threw 0 interceptions after that game on October 30th. That's 5 games right there, and including the bowl win against Florida. Very, very good holding on to the ball, and you don't expect that out of a true freshman. So I think he's very much a fair candidate on this, and just on a little bit biased, he's my vote because he got thrown in the fire and had to lead an entire offense.
After that Memphis game, Drew, 12 touchdowns, 1 interception for Mikey Keene, true freshman.
Right. He did have 5 in that Temple game where he had that last interception. But after that, never threw another pick the rest of the year. You don't expect that out of an 18-year-old.
Yeah. Bryson, let's talk a little baseball. Let's talk about Lex Boddicker and Andrew Sundin. You talked about Sundin already in a previous category, but what did Lex Boddicker do this year that was key for UCF?
I'm telling you what, this is one of those, Lex Boddicker is one of those players in a year of personalities and stories on this baseball program. Ben McCabe having a slow start coming up, that sort of thing. Lex Boddicker was one of the quieter players on this team, yet he quietly went to hit the second highest batting average on the team of someone that has more than 150 at bats. He batted 188 times. He hit a batting average of 330, and only one that hit higher batting average than him was Jeffrey Pena. And Lex, he started a good amount of the games he played. And from like the word go, Bodecker was in there a lot of the time. He played first base for a bit when Nick Romano got hurt. But then he really found a home out there in left field, and he was just kind of quietly just raking it. And I mean, it's unfortunate that, he's not mentioned a lot more when you have people like Sonny D who broke out the way he did, or Jeffrey Pena being the speedster, or Connor Stain and Hunter Patterson being dominant on the mound. But Lex Bodecker has, when you look at the numbers, has quietly had an amazing first season with this baseball program. And I'm very glad that left field is in very good hands with him.
Kyle, Darius Johnson was a highly touted recruit, and boy, he looks to be living up to the hype, doesn't he, for men's basketball?
Couldn't put it better that he is, Jeff. And listen, second on the team in assists. Yeah, I know it's because he's a point guard, but when it's a situation when you have Darius Perry in there ahead of you, the statesman as senior doing his thing, to watch Darius Johnson come and make himself in a position to make Perry more of a shooting guard at times, took over the team. And I mentioned his stats of having 3 assists per game and all of that. If you're not impressed by that, fine. How about the fact that there is a particular moment that exemplifies it better than no other? Senior captain center, 7-footer, Chikembake Jean rolls out to the top to start a play, and Darius Johnson just waves him off. And
I knew you were going to bring that one up.
Waves him. Of course, you have to, Jeff. And just the leadership he exhibited as a young man. Listen, you could be hyped and have a bazillion points, but to be a leader that quickly and to command a guy that's at least a full foot taller than you on off the court in a game like that they did eventually win. And by the way, the play in question, he also took it to the rack himself to get 2 points on the layup. That is a great exemplary moment for what Darius Johnson was this year, and what a place to build on for him to be a big deal next year for the basketball program.
It was my favorite part of that play. It wasn't so much Darius waving Mbake off. It was Mbake kind of looking at him like, all right.
Not wrong, boss.
All right. You got it. Go for it, son. So there's your freshman of the year: Mikey Keene, Lex Bodecker, Darius Johnson, Andrew Sundin. I'm going to try and not screw up the order this time. When we talk about transfers of the year, we're going to do women and then men. Women's transfer of the year. This category is going to get a lot more play, I think, as the time goes by with the portal and everything. But we got 4 really strong nominees in each of these awards. First for the women, Kayla Woodall in softball. From volleyball, Claudia Dillon. From track, Brittany Floyd. And from softball, Janisha Rowe. I'm going to defer once again to Eric Lopez on both Janisha Rowe and Kayla Woodall, who were tremendous contributors to UCF this year, Eric, in the portal.
Yeah, Janisha Rowe coming over from Florida Gulf Coast, starting at center field. Kira Clarkowski had been the center fielder for 4 years, graduated. You didn't know what you were going to get at center field, and here she plugged in, hitting the top of the lineup most of the year. Great glove at center field. I mean, it was just nothing you could hit in center field would drop. But then when you look at Kamal Woodall, and I've made this comment, Kamal Woodall is to UCF softball what Mike Hughes is to UCF football. No UCF athletes have made the big impact in a one-and-done year as far as a transfer, or somebody transferred from another school, like Mike Hughes did in football in 2017 and Kamal Woodall did in 2022. If Kamal Woodall is not on this UCF softball team, they don't win the conference regular season title or the tournament. None of that happens because she filled her role as the 1-2 punch there with Gianna Mancha. She is the Mike Hughes of softball.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk more about Kayman in a little bit in the next segment when we get to performance of the year. But you mentioned Janisha Rowe as well. I mean, what a year that she had as well. But I think you're totally right about Kayma. Man, what a performance she had. But I want to shout out Claudia Dillon here for UCF volleyball, who was a very quiet transfer, I think, for this program. Came in as a middle blocker, 6'2", out of Evergreen, Colorado. Previously played in the SEC at Mizzou. Came in and was a real stalwart up front defensively for this team that was one of the best blocking teams in the country. All conference first team as middle blocker. 207 kills, third on the team. 2.65 points per set. 98 blocks this year, and was what I thought was really cool. At one point this year, she was named the defensive player of the week one week, and then the offensive player of the week in the conference the next. And also was a surprisingly good server, 33 aces on the team. So she's a lot more, we usually think of middle blockers as kind of one-trick ponies, just stand there and jump up. All conference first team. What can you say about Claudia Dillon that hasn't been said at least for this year? I'm glad she's coming back for one more year. And then Bryson, you have made the case for Brittany Floyd, who came in and really contributed mightily for UCF track and field this year.
Oh, yes, very much. I mean, Brittany Floyd can come in and I would argue redefined the expectations for multi-athletes here at UCF. She broke the pentathlon school record. In the indoor season, she broke a pentathlon record that has stood since 2009. And she ended up beating it by about 200 points. And then in the outdoor, she beat a heptathlon record that has stood since 2003. And she beat it by about 400 points. And oh yeah, she ended up going to Eugene for it as well. So and to put it in perspective, like doing a pentathlon or heptathlon, doing these multiple track events in the span of like 1 or 2 days is extremely hard to do on your body and really exhaustive. And Brittany Floyd just completely redefined what those multi-athletes are doing. She was working with Natalia Madison, who is a younger multi-athlete on there, and she was putting up numbers in the heptathlon in around Brittany's neighborhood. She's actually third, has the third highest career high all time in the heptathlon. So I think Floyd has very much impacted multi-athletes in the track and field program for years.
All right, women's transfer of the year nominees once again: Kama Woodall of softball, Janisha Rowe of softball, Claudia Dillon of volleyball, Brittany Floyd of track and field. That takes us to the men's transfer of the year. 4 nominees once again: from men's soccer, Nick Taylor; from men's basketball, Mbake Jong; from baseball, Connor Stain; and from football, Brandon Johnson. Kyle, I want to start with you and Brandon Johnson of football, who comes from a family that's known for catching things, being the son of former Major League Baseball all-star catcher Charles Johnson. Didn't put up a lot of huge numbers at Tennessee, but man, when he came to UCF, he broke out into a touchdown machine, didn't he?
Absolutely that. I mean, listen, at some point they figured out that Ryan O'Keefe was a big deal and maybe we should double him and pay a lot of attention. And boy, did that set the table for opportunities for Brandon Johnson. The way he seemed to find the end zone in big moments did great things for the squad. And overall, by the way, his ability to do things away from the ball, like, hey, the reason why he got the rock is because he could block. I love this physicality for a guy of his size, doing a lot of good things there too. One could say what they will about Big Cat Bryant, who in my opinion underperformed his hype. Brandon Johnson came in and did a fantastic job in the receiver corps.
Yeah. Connor Stain for baseball, Bryson Turner. He had dozens of scouts at one point looking at him, didn't he?
Oh, yes, very much. I would absolutely be shocked if he didn't get drafted, even with the injuries that have hampered him this season, which, by the way, in my opinion, one of the biggest what ifs on the baseball team this year is what if Connor Stain wasn't hurt? Because with his early performances that he was clocking in, he had 10 strikeouts in that win against number 2 Ole Miss. He also had an 8 strikeout performance in USF. He did not give up more than 2 hits until April 8th. I mean, it's absolutely insane how well he did. It's just unfortunate that his back injury and then a blister on his finger kind of derailed him a little bit. But I mean, with the performances that he did put out, he's definitely a good choice for this award.
One other men's transfer we need to talk about, Kyle, Shek Mbaka Jong, who came over from UNLV and was the quintessential rim protector for this team and brought some swag on the floor as well.
Yeah, no, I like that you mentioned it. We talk about CJ Walker bringing that attitude, the swag that Sheik Mbake Jong does. Listen, he dropped the Dikembe Mutombo swing on his first block of the season.
The double.
Yeah. Oh, did he do a double? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And hey, listen, props to our good friend Eric DeSalvo for giving us the gift of that, by the way. But at the end of the day, he when needed at times, he could put up 8 to 10 points to carry the load as well if concentration was brought to CJ Walker. And as a transfer coming in to become a captain of the squad, an off-time show a ton of grit to do what he can for a UCF team who frankly could be outsized a lot. It could be him versus a few bigs that are, it makes it a heck of a battle under the glass. Chikembake Jean was an excellent presence to bring things not only on the floor, but then to keep things fresh and going as a captain as well, with at times a freshman point guard even being wise enough, for example, to let him take it to the hall, as we talked about earlier. But yeah, Chikembake Jean was not only a force to reckon with and be intimidating, he had a great presence and voice after the game as well in press conferences to portray the message that his team was working under as they went through the season.
Last nominee, Nick Taylor for men's soccer. You know, it's not all the time that you see a guy who transfers in from an in-conference competitor, especially one who's pretty good, as SMU has been over the last few years. But Nick came in from SMU and fit in like a glove with this team, setting up the offense. Was all-conference second team. Finished with started in 16 of UCF's 17 matches this year. And set the table like crazy. 9 assists. That's tied for the eighth most in a single season in UCF history. Just 3 short of tying the program record. 18th in the nation with 9 assists on the season, like we mentioned, and was 10th in the nation in assists per game at 0.56, and helped UCF. Got a goal in the semis as well, and was so good, in fact, that Orlando City took a shot on him with the 74th pick of the MLS Super Draft, not just the regular draft, the Super Draft. Boy, we were lucky to have him for the 1 year that we did at UCF. So there's your men's transfers of the year: Brandon Johnson for football, Connor Stain for baseball, Chikembake Jean for basketball, and Nick Taylor for soccer. Last individual award before we go to a break. We're going to do the comeback athlete of the year. This goes to an athlete who maybe suffered an injury or another circumstance, who missed some significant time or really was in doubt of having a good season this past year and achieved that comeback status. This one's always a little subjective, but we love it because it always makes for great stories. From women's basketball, Diamond Battles; from softball, Kennedy Searcy; from baseball, Alex Freeland; and from football, Trillian Coles. Drew, Trillian Coles didn't exactly put up the wildest numbers in the world, but the mere fact that he was able to take the field at all after what he's been through with that Achilles injury he suffered is certainly merits a lot of attention here, didn't it?
Absolutely. And not only that, but I mean, just, the story itself is what really carries it. He was a walk-on to UCF, played a little bit back in 2019. Achilles tendon injury, those were pretty bad. Those had very long recovery, missed all of the 2020 season. And shortly before the 21 season started, he gets put on scholarship. He gets on the field during the game against Bethune-Cookman, 11 rushes, 78 yards, and gets a touchdown. And then he also had a receiving touchdown. So that kind of hey, mom, I did it moment. And while he doesn't have the numbers that a Diamond Battles has, that doesn't make the adversity of having to come back from that kind of injury any less appealing of a story. And just going from walk-on to scholarship to scoring the touchdown, kind of hitting that moment, actually resonates a lot with me personally from my own sports history, where I never got to that part. I missed out on injury and never came back. He got there, and you got to give a lot of respect for guys who go through that kind of recovery from an injury, a bad injury at that.
Bryson, Alex Freeland, make the case.
Okay, so this comes in the form of a mid-season comeback, but I argue that it deserves this award because of the grit, the visual grit that Alex Freeland displayed here. He ended up going out with a wrist injury on April 15th against East Carolina, and he tried to play through it. Looking back at that footage, you can tell that he wanted to keep playing, and the trainers checked on him and he still played, but then they ended up determining that he had to come out. He was out for a month, Jeff, and then he came back in the last week. Jeff told, Greg Lovely told me, I remember that he was kind of 50-50 shot for the last series, and they wanted him to come back for the tournament. He came back against Cincinnati, and he still ended up performing. He actually ended up getting a hat, so much so that his standout performance, he had a 2 home run game in their loss in the semifinal against Houston. You can talk about the reasons that UCF lost that second semifinal game against Houston, but Alex Freeland was not one of them. And you can tell after his last at bat, the way he was grabbing his wrist, he was in pain, Jeff, but he came back anyway, and he did that. So I know people can talk about, oh, it has to be a previous season, but this midseason comeback and the grit that Freeland had to go through in order to do that, I'm sorry. I think he deserves it for this.
Eric Lopez, tell us about Kennedy Searcy. What did she come back from, and why do you think she would deserve this award?
Torn ACL. She tore last April in Greenville, ended her season. UCF never really was the same team without her. They've won over 80% of games that she's started since she's been at UCF. Didn't get cleared to play until the opening week of the season against Georgia. It was a couple days beforehand that she got cleared, and even then was only cleared to DP, couldn't play the field right away. Eventually, not only does she play the field, she excels at third base. She comes back better than ever, hits and is all-conference performer, and really filled a big hole for them because it allows Jada Cody to catch, and she got to play third base. All of that coming from a torn ACL, and she even admitted to me and Bryson throughout the year she wasn't 100% until really at the end of the year, fully. So I think the best is still to come from Kennedy Searcy. But, considering how there wasn't a lot of high expectations about her going into the season because of that injury recovery, it's been pretty remarkable.
Diamond Battles, Kyle Nash, we saw her get carried off the floor in that NCAA tournament game last season. And I think all of us had that pit in our stomach watching that, thinking, oh my God, we're not going to see Diamond Battles for another year. Not only does she come back straight away from recovering from that injury, but is the conference defensive player of the year and conference overall player of the year. Yes, we're going to miss her as she makes her way up to Athens, but what a performance this year.
Absolutely. And listen, as I was gearing up to cover the women's basketball for the first time, Elo himself kind of briefed me and prepped me. Hey, you're going to talk to Diamond. She got injured. Let's see how she talk to her about that, see what she's going to do about recovery and how that feels. To be honest, in talking to her, I didn't even bring it up because she was that raring to go already. And the first loss of the year where they faced Tennessee and nearly beat an SEC squad, I might add, while they struggled as a team, I asked Coach Abe that night, what was, there was a close match. We talked about what fell wrong. What was the high point of your team? In a single word, without hesitation, Diamond. Diamond was there with it. She was the one that was consistent. And game in and game out, she was a force defensively. She was a force offensively. She could take it to the hole. She could shoot it from three. She could pass the dang ball. And every scouting report, Diamond Battles with name on the list. And Jeff, here's the thing about it. What resonates most with her is the fact that she's an influencer as a leader for her team, of course. But when other UCF athletes, regardless of gender, talk about who they emulate as a performer overall, they mention none other than Diamond Battles. And dang it, while the opportunity was missing here in Orlando, I hope she gets an NIL with a jeweler somewhere because that's a missed opportunity. Dang it.
Such a missed opportunity. I'm not going to lie to you. Well, she did get some jewelry this past year. Diamond Battles, Kennedy Searcy, Alex Freeland, Trillion Coles, Comeback Athletes of the Year. Remember, folks, you can vote on this and all of our awards over the next couple of weeks on blackandgoldbanneret.com. Follow us on Twitter, UCF Banneret _SBN. All right, take a break. When we come back, we got a lot to still get to, and this is going to be the fun part of the show. Game of the year, story of the year, play of the year, moment of the year, individual performances, and of course, athlete and team of the year as we wrap up the 2022 Black and Gold Banneret Awards here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Stick around. We are back after this. We are back here for the 2022 Black and Gold Banneret Awards nomination show. I'm Jeff Sharon. We have the full crew here: Eric Lopez, Bryson Turner, Andrew Glukov, and Kyle Nash. And we are moving to what I think is like the momentum's really going to pick up now as we move to the more of the team and moment and things that happened awards. And we're going to start with the game of the year. We've split this off into men's and women's this year. We will start with the men's game of the year. We have 4 nominees. 2 of them are football games. Number 1, the Gasparilla Bowl, UCF defeating Florida. Number 2, the Boise State opener, which happened so early that probably hardly any of you watched it. No, you all watched it. We have baseball's victory, 1-0 victory over number 2, Ole Miss. Ole Miss in the championship series, by the way. And men's basketball's victory over the Michigan Wolverines at home, Juwan Howard and company. Let's start with that Boise State game, because that was really, I went back and looked at the highlights of that game, and Kyle, I'll start with you, or excuse me, Drew, I'll start with you on this one. When you go back and look at, you're down 24-7 and UCF comes back. I thought this really could have been, all the sourness that we have, the fans have towards Dylan Gabriel. Boy, it did not exist that night, because we thought we were going to see a brand new, much more diversified quarterback out there with that game. And what a way for Gus to make his UCF debut. Of course, the weather was a factor delaying the game, but wow, if you stayed up for it, it lived up to the hype.
Well, you say delay. I mean, delay is a kind of understatement for what actually happened. It was 2 hours and 45 minutes worth of delay. Every time, they start getting ready to go, more lightning, there's another 30-minute delay. So both teams are thrown off by this, but Boise State exploded out of the gate. They had a 14-0 first quarter lead. I mean, it looked like everything was just falling apart. But, as you said, Dylan Gabriel had himself a pretty good game, 300 yards passing, 4 touchdowns. He threw a couple picks. But I think one of the things that we talked about many times when he was first a freshman in 2019 was the fact he wasn't running. Then in 2020, we saw him moving the ball more. 12 carries, 64 yards. I mean, with a long of 23. He was able to take it and run. But this was also the exploding coming out party of one Isaiah Bowser. 33 carries, 172 yards, and a big touchdown that helped propel to a 36-31 game. This was a statement game for Isaiah Bowser that established him as a fan favorite among the team, as well as the number 1 guy. We also saw, Jalen Robinson had himself a good game. Brandon Johnson had a touchdown on his debut as a transfer. This was a game of momentum. And, much like we saw with UCF early after the Louisville game, momentum stopped. Things weren't looking good. They picked up and they kept going. It was almost a microcosm of the entire season.
Yeah. Am I glad we still managed to get the victory that night, though? It would have been a real waste if we lost staying up that late, wasn't it? Still, that's got to be one of my favorite games, really, of all time. But I'm with the people who say that, hey, look, there's some real history when UCF beat Florida in the Gasparilla Bowl in Tampa, in the state of Florida. Third matchup all time between these two schools. A nice one, 29-17, in the game where it really was, I think, a pure team effort, Eric Lopez. One of my favorite stats from this game, Elo, is the fact that this was, it was the first time that Florida lost to a team from the state of Florida other than Miami or Florida State since Stetson in 1938.
It speaks
credit to Andrea Adelson for that stat. But wow, what a night that was for the program.
Well, it shows how much gutless Florida is as far as playing teams in general. But
Hey,
Look, this made UCF's football season. This was like all the negativity or issues or however you want to, look back at UCF football season kind of got erased with the Florida win. Hugely. Big for Gus Malzahn. I think for those that maybe had lost confidence after the first year was shaky for whatever reason, whether you agree with it or not, I'm not saying you have to agree with it to take, that win was huge. And obviously with everything that played out, tribute to Otis and everything, absolutely was big. It was Kyle, this is why bowl games work, because teams like bowl games, because it's a second chance in a season if things don't go well during the year. And this is the perfect example. This is a game. This is going to be the game and moment and that will be remembered anytime you think of the UCF football season come 2021.
And hey, listen, I could argue this might be the best performing Gasparilla Bowl for some time to come as far as attendance. I don't see a way it gets better than this.
Draw big numbers too on television, over 3 million on that. And look, the performance in that second half in that fourth quarter where they dominated the line of scrimmage against Florida, an SEC team, that was the big one. Yeah.
Beat them. Physically beat them. That was so satisfying to watch. I want to go to Bryson here and talk about that baseball win against number 2 Ole Miss. You talk about drama, all right? Number 2 team in the country coming into town. It was Citronaut Day. Game goes 12 innings, and UCF gets the win on a Riley Wash RBI single in the bottom of the 12th. Connor Stain was fantastic that day. 7 innings, 10 Ks, despite getting the no decision. And UCF goes toe-to-toe with the team that may very well win the national championship. And they get the victory in dramatic fashion. Maybe the season wasn't the greatest season in the world for UCF baseball, but wow, they'll have that win to hang their hat on.
Oh, yeah. For me, I think that this game is sort of an emblematic of where this program can be at its best. Because again, they were hampered by injuries. This was before all that. And they'd put up an amazing fight against the number 2 team in the country and possibly potential College World Series champions. Who knows? I mean, Jeffrey Pena went 3 for 4 on the night and was the winning run that Riley Wash scored in the 12th inning. And major props for Connor Stain getting 10 strikeouts, only allowing 2 hits in 7 innings. And then Chasen Tala, transfer. He gets 6 strikeouts in only allows one hit, 3 walks. I mean, and he lasted for 5 innings. That is a lot longer than usually you want to rely on a relief pitcher for. So absolutely well done performance by this team in that game. And I think really shows what this program is capable of at its best.
Kyle, the highlight of the men's basketball season, I think, was that victory over Juwan Howard in Michigan. All the hype coming into that game. UCF was 5-2, 6-2, 7-2, 8-2. They were 8-2. They go to 9-2 in that game, December 30th. Big time crowd and a second half really to remember, because UCF was down 4, almost 9,400 people in the arena that night. It was jam packed to see Juwan Howard and the Michigan Wolverines, and UCF outscores Michigan 54-36 in the second half. Thanks in large part to Darren Green and Brandon Mahan, who combined for 53 points together. And UCF also was 8 for 8 from 3-point range in the second half. It was just a remarkable performance.
Remarkable doesn't even begin to start, Jeff. Easily the second half of basketball, best second half of basketball as a performance goes that I've ever witnessed personally in any game that I've attended, college pro or otherwise. And listen, I'm going to take the opportunity to credit all of you helping me on Twitter. I am from being not traumatized, just completely shook. I have no idea how to interpret what I saw. If you guys didn't remind me, yes, this stuff is statistically that nuts. Yes, the atmosphere was that electric. You aren't being biased. It was really like that kind of game. If you accused me of bias here, I would have to recuse myself were I a judge. Just a completely electric moment all the way around.
4 games of the year for nominations, 2 football games, the Gasparilla Bowl against Florida, the Boise State opener, the Michigan win for men's basketball at home, and the 1-0 win in 12 innings over number 2 Ole Miss for baseball. Those are your 4 nominees for men's game of the year. Women's game of the year, we got 5 nominations in this category: 2 women's basketball, 2 softball, and a track and field. For track, the outdoor AAC championship, which UCF won. For softball, the walk-off win over Georgia on opening night. And later on in the season, the win over Michigan in the NCAA regionals, the 11-inning dramatic win on ESPN2 for UCF softball. And then the two women's basketball games, the American Athletic Championship title game against USF, and then the NCAA first-round game against the Florida Gators. Bryson, I'm going to start with you at the NCAA track and field meet where UCF clinched the double, winning both the indoor and the outdoor, and a great performance for the Knights in the conference meet.
Oh, yes, extremely well. Renaya, of course, was Renaya. Latasha, but this was one where the entire team showed up. Latasha Smith, Ashira Collins, Adrian Adams, it was a who's who of UCF track and field, to the point where UCF set a meet score record in this game. She got with 163 points, dominated the rest of the field, with Houston coming in at second at 105.5. I mean, there is a reason that Dana Boone got that outdoor coaching staff of the year award. It was an absolute domination on the track for UCF. Like, I remember when on the last day when the track finals were coming in, and UCF just immediately shot of the leaderboard as soon as those track finals were coming in, and the Knights were getting points every which way you look. So absolutely dominating performance, and it really deserves its spot in the nominations for this award.
Eric Lopez, let's talk about those two softball games because they're almost bookends to one another. With UCF opening the season in dramatic fashion with a victory over Georgia on that famous home run by Shannon Doherty in the 8th inning. That kind of set the tone for UCF. And then later on the season, and my personal favorite, the 11-inning win over Michigan, the drama of college softball on full display in that game, 3-2 in 11 innings on ESPN2, nonetheless, right? Something UCF softball hasn't done yet.
Sure.
Kima Woodall going the distance against the number 24 team in the country, and UCF coming back from down 2-0 late in that game to force it to extras and win it. I mean, take your pick.
Well, let's start with the Georgia game. That was set the tone for the season. It was a game that it turned out to be the most watched event, however you want to programming on ESPN Plus. We were told after the fact, blew up Twitter. Everybody was watching, trending. Wild back and forth game, first game of the season that it was capped off by Shannon Doherty's walk-off homer in the 8th inning, which is one of the most popular clips that's been played, and helped me get nominated for a podcast call for a national award. So there you go. Thank you, Shannon Doherty. Appreciate you. But it really did set the tone for their season they would have. And then the Michigan game you mentioned, winner's bracket game. UCF had never won a winner's bracket game in the history in the NCAA tournament ever until that game. But they were down to their last strike. Maddie Bejarano with the base hit to tie the game. Kama Woodall was going 11 innings through 181 pitches. Bryson, you were outside with the media because, as Andrew brought up earlier in the show, there's some issues to be worked at on the facilities at softball there, Kyle. You don't have to worry about being outside in the sun with no shade at the basketball arena. All right. Bryson, how hot was it?
It was hot enough that I got a sunburn on my face, and it was enough for me to get a low-grade fever afterwards because of how badly my forehead was sunburned.
Thank you. There you go. Confirmation. And she stayed and pitched all 11 innings. The social people are saying, like, isn't she going to pull her out? Going to take her out? Nope, she didn't. And then Maddie Bejarano with the base hit down the line to win it 3-2. It's the biggest win ever in the program at home. Biggest win. That crowd was incredible. It set them up nicely because you remember that regional rain came afterwards. Michigan had to play a game before the regional final the next day because of weather issues. If UCF doesn't win that game, they probably, I don't know if they win that regional, but an unbelievable day that I will never forget with incredible conditions, as Bryson just brought up.
It's the stuff that legends are made of. It's the moment that we'd all been waiting to see, I think, in the Plex for years. And boy, did it
drew more television viewers, by the way, than UCF Michigan basketball did.
Interesting. I want to go to Kyle for the two women's basketball games, which were really back-to-back games. The AAC title game against South Florida. This was a matchup of the heavyweights in the American. They were on a collision course all year. This game was as tight as it could be all throughout, and UCF finally pulled it out in the fourth quarter, held USF to 6 points en route to an 8-point victory. Let's not forget that UCF was down 2 at the start of the fourth quarter when they finally, were able to pull it out. Diamond Battles with 17 points, 9 points and 9 rebounds for Masni Kaba in this game. And it was just such a clash. And then finally, even though it wasn't as dramatic a game as that previous game, first round of the NCAAs in stores, UCF playing Florida again in the postseason, and the Knights get their first ever NCAA tournament victory. I don't think the significance of this can be understated. Sure, it wasn't really an upset in the truest sense of the word, but the fact that UCF dominated Florida in this game and set up the game against UConn, which, we all know how that went. But, I just think that game's significance of winning an NCAA tournament game for the first time in school history after so many tries can't be understated. But I think I know what way you're going to go here.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, and as for the Florida game, part of the reason why that game is now so unmemorable is the fact that Brittany Buckets went precisely nuts in the game in question. But hey, listen, at the end of the day, I don't care about the wambulance that Elo and Bryson are calling. Oh, I'm getting sunburned. That's wonderful. The fire and passion that you saw in the USF and USF battle, the third of the year, I might add, in a rivalry that, well, while some on this panel may lament it and some may not, of it going away in football, at the end of the day, the horns down concept for UCF fans is absolutely huge. And say what you will, the previous year, USF won the day on the strength of shooting it from the cheap seats, trying to take them down, actually successfully taking UCF down from beyond the arc. Pretty ball, as Coach Abe used to call it, but not so in this game. USF had a huge contribution down low from Bethy Manunga. You saw battle in the paint. You saw plenty of fire being launched from beyond the arc and a lot of outside shooting. It was a very versatile offense because
we saw some tempers flaring in that game too.
There's a little bit more fire too. I remember putting a tweet in the game of Masni Kaba staring down. I forget which player it was from USF, but it was one of those, who you looking at kind of exchanges. Definitely something worth mention. Right you are there, Jeff. I mean, listen, bring the sunscreen and I'm indoors, okay? At the end of the day, being able to take down USF 3 times, being able to get past Coach Jose and doing all of that to finally get to that mountaintop, set the history to that point, get the highest seed in program history. And listen, I'm not saying the Florida game wasn't significant, but boy, you'll pardon the pun, but Diamond led her team into some battles to get that one.
I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. No.
Can someone mute him?
Not true. You called for it.
Your 5 nominees for Women's Game of the Year. UCF defeating Michigan in softball in 11 innings in the NCAAs. UCF softball walking off Georgia in the season opener. UCF women's basketball beating South Florida in the American Championship. UCF women's basketball beating Florida in the first round of the NCAAs. And, of course, the track and field outdoor AACs. Here's a fun one that I think I wanted to get to. Story of the year. We have 3. These are kind of like what were the big picture stories for UCF coming out of this year that we followed and we thought were the really significant stories that came to define this past year in UCF sports. We've got 3 of them. Number 1, UCF going to the Big 12. I mean, that's pretty big, and that was finalized this year. Seems like a while ago, doesn't it? Women's basketball finally breaking through and winning the American after years and years of being stonewalled by UConn and coming so close against South Florida. They finally break through, win the American. And finally, the Orlando NCAA softball regional, UCF hosting a regional for the first time in school history and winning the regional. Let's go. I want to start with the other two first, but Eric, the significance of hosting a regional, it means your program has arrived.
Absolutely. And softball, that was the big question. Could softball ever host? People were skeptical. Well, they don't have the Florida and Florida State are in the state. They're never going to be able to do it. That was the big moment. And then they get to host an incredible celebration, which everybody was at the week before. Then they host it, sells out on Tuesday. You have this place packed. If it wasn't for Mother Nature, we would have had later start times. I think we would have even had bigger crowds. But as is, we probably had about 1,500, 2,000. And then to host that regional, the environment, the alumni coming back in droves, a marquee regional with Michigan in it, and then to win that regional, it's a moment I'll never forget. Like, if I could loop any weekend for the rest of my life, just loop it. That's the weekend I'm looping it for the rest of my life. I'm good. It's a moment I'll never be forgotten. It's not something that's common. Baseball's never hosted. Volleyball hosted once. Men's soccer has hosted never hosted a round of 16. They've hosted a couple of NCAA tournament games. Soccer has a different format, but tracks host. But I would say this is a significant moment that brought a lot of casual people and fans to this event. I mean, this was bigger than UCF.
Kyle, women's basketball finally breaking through, getting the monkey off their back after years of UConn just dominating this conference. And then they come so close, yet so far against South Florida last year. For them to finally break through, win the conference, hang that banner, it was a tremendous moment for the program. And it was the first time that they won both the regular season championship and the conference tournament championship since the A Sundays in more than 20 years. So this is a big moment for that program as well. And just a tremendous story seeing them achieve that crescendo of performance.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, specifically to when they clinched the conference at home against Cincinnati, the team that earlier in the year offered them their worst loss on the docket, to do it against them, to dominate in the fashion they did. Destiny Thomas with a triple-double herself, and just everybody basically going off in some way, shape, form, or fashion was really a great way to pay tribute to the fans for the way that they were supported throughout the year and all the hype that was gained there too. One last time to see Diamond Battles come out on senior night as she did. Masni Kaba also putting a swan song in after 1,000-point season. And all of that, and really a great opportunity, what would turn out to be an ultimate farewell therein. I don't believe they played again at home in a significant, air quotes, game, because the rest of it was in Connecticut for the tourney. So at the end of the day, it was a great high point for them to depart on, and was the first of several bits of history made for the squad. And, one last time for the fans to say goodbye, as it would turn out, and celebrate the greatness that was this team.
Drew, the floor goes to you for this move about the Big 12. And I guess we can throw the Sun Belt in there as well. But, this is how big is, really put it into perspective here, into context. UCF getting the invitation to the Big 12 and becoming a Power 5 school.
We got to go back to around 1990 when UCF first joined Division I. They went in the American South Conference, which probably almost no one's heard of. Then the Sun Belt, then the TAC/ASUN, a football stint in the MAC, Conference USA, the American. They went from nobody, from being an absolute nobody, to being part of the Power 5. Is a culmination of 30 plus years of Division I athletics. It's an opportunity that almost no school has ever had that level of growth. They're the youngest school to ever join the Power 5. This is the culmination of a resume that has been built over the last decade plus in all sports. They're tied with Houston for the most conference championships in America. This is not a case of just being in the right place at the right time. This is not just being lucky. This is a resume that has been earned. UCF has earned this opportunity. And I think that's what makes it that much more fulfilling. This is a game changer. We know that Power 5 conference schools get more money, get more prestige, and get more opportunity. And UCF's going to, as of July 1st next year, is going to count themselves as part of it. We thought we were getting that with the Big East when in 2011 UCF got the invite and then everything fell apart. Now it looks like UCF's got another opportunity, and I think has a better opportunity since the conference is a much more stable conference. There's no hybrid set up multiple agendas. This is by far, in my opinion, the biggest story for this year. I think it dwarfs them all.
All right. So there's your three stories here. I think we know which one's going to win here. Big 12, women's basketball winning the American, and the Orlando softball regional for story of the year. Play of the year, we have 5 nominees. Men's basketball, Darren Green's buzzer beater against ECU to win that game, a 3-pointer at the horn. Softball, Shannon Doherty's walk-off homer and bat flip against University of Georgia. Women's basketball, Diamond Battles' game-winning reverse layup against Arkansas at home set the tone for the season. Baseball, Riley Wash's walk-off hit against number 2 Ole Miss that won UCF that 1-0 game we talked about earlier. And then one more thing for softball, UCF getting the victory over Houston in the American semis on a walk-off home run in the 8th inning by Savannah Adams,
freshman, pitch hitting.
Another freshman contributing for UCF softball, so that's always fun to see. But I want to go through these pretty quickly because we're going pretty long. But I want to speak real quick to the Darren Green buzzer beater real quick. Credit to you. This is kind of Darren's big moment at UCF. I think we'll remember him for this. Of course, he transferred to Florida State, but in a game that was a really tough one at a really tough point in the season for UCF, to get that victory at the buzzer on a true buzzer beater was really satisfying to watch. And just to show the greatness of Darren Green as a shooter, how he was, first of all, everyone knew he was getting the ball and he got open and got the foot and had his, and by the way, some Ray Allen-esque footwork, getting his feet behind the line, setting himself, getting the ball off and winning the game for UCF. That was fun to see from my perspective. Eric, 2 softball plays. I mean, we could probably separate out our own, Shannon Doherty winning hit of the year.
Like we could have done
if we wanted to.
We could have done a Doherty. We could have done a Doherty trilogy. We could have done a ton of softball. The Doherty Georgia one obviously speaks for itself. We discussed that earlier. It's up for a national award. It's probably going to be one of the most memorable clips and moments in the history of that program, maybe in UCF's athletics in general, like non-softball fans, Richard. But I want to talk Savannah Adams, because this might be as significant of a pinch hit home run we'll ever see in any UCF sport. Bottom of the 8th, Houston. UCF's in a position to host. I spoke to people in the committee recently who admitted to me, if UCF loses this game to Houston, there's a good chance they're not hosting and probably going to Gainesville, which means Bryson and I would have been eating at McAllister up there in Gainesville, getting ready to cover a regional. So the game is 2-2. There's bad weather because it's Greenville. It's always bad weather. What kind of dumb conference would schedule a tournament in Greenville in May? Anyway, Gianna Mancha, blister issues in the 8th inning. You don't know how long she's going to go. Cindy Ball Malone calls Savannah Adams' number. A freshman, hadn't hit a home run all year, hits a 2-run homer to walk it off, basically win the title because they destroyed South Florida the next day. Savannah Adams, it's the biggest pinch hit home run in the history of UCF baseball or softball. Without that homer, I don't think UCF hosts. That's why Cindy Ball Malone got taken care of this week by Terry Mohajir and UCF with an extension through 2027, which and compensated very well, and rightfully so. That, to me, is a significant moment. UCF doesn't host without that Adams homer.
Diamond Battles game winner against Arkansas. Bryson, I want to defer to you on this one because you pushed hard for this one, and it was kind of a crowning moment for Diamond, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, I would agree. Arkansas, it was one of those I guess when you say high profile games, for the women's basketball program this year. I mean, coming off of that Cancun challenge, and I mean, it was just a beautiful reverse layup. Like we're looking at play of the year, we're like looking at the execution of the play. And I think that Diamond Battles' execution, like you wouldn't have known that this was a game-winning layup, that if she misses, then they're going to lose. And the pressure is on. And she made it look effortless when she did that. So I think that when you look at it from a pure execution standpoint to making it look easy in a high pressure situation, then Diamond absolutely killed it right there.
And Riley Wash, which we talked about earlier, that game-winning hit for UCF, getting the victory over Ole Miss, a significant moment, as we're going to see as he drove in Jeffrey Pena for the winning hit. So there's your 5 nominees for Play of the Year: Darren Green's buzzer beater against ECU, Shannon Doherty's walk-off versus Georgia, Diamond Battles' game-winning layup against Arkansas, Riley Wash's walk-off against Ole Miss, and Savannah Adams' pinch hit semifinal homer. I think that's the sleeper one here for UCF softball.
It's like the moment for the American tournament. Everyone remembers what this happened in the semifinal, but everyone forgets you had to do the final, but it's for good reason.
Moment of the year. We've got a few of these that we got to get through, but some of them kind of overlap with a few things, but I think you kind of get like, what's this one moment that really transcends not just a game or a great play. All right. I think I know which one's going to win here. Of course, Ryan O'Keefe, tribute to Otis Anderson as he scored that long touchdown that put UCF up for good in the Gasparilla Bowl. That's one. UCF winning the regional in softball, knocking off Michigan the second time, advancing to the Supers for the first time in school history. Women's basketball, cutting down the nets after clinching the American Athletic Conference regular season championship at home against Cincinnati. Softball on Selection Sunday, getting that regional, seeing their name come up on the board and seeing them as a host. And then finally, I think this is good. This one's going to make it tougher than everyone else. Mackenzie Milton returning to the bounce house and playing on the field at UCF for the final time at the Hula Bowl, ending, and as it turns out, ending his college football career and his football career by playing in that game back at home. 5 really good moments here. I want to talk, or Drew, let's start with you and talking about Ryan O'Keefe and that moment in the Gasparilla Bowl. Spontaneous or not, I don't know. We didn't ask Ryan O'Keefe about that, but iconic, I think, is how I would describe it.
I call it divine. And the reason why is if you actually look back, it was a 54-yard touchdown reception by Ryan O'Keefe. The play that Otis Anderson got famous for in 2018 against Memphis in the American Athletic Conference Championship game was for 54 yards. So we're talking the same distance. I mean, that's divine. That's just not iconic. There's something more to it. Obviously, first came after the passing of Anderson, and he was such a motivator for that team going into that. And it was a tribute to an all-around great guy who was taken way too soon. So I think that you got the iconic side of the picture, but you get the divine part of the fact that they scored it and did the same thing on the same distance. And it's like, how do you do that?
Yeah. I mean, we have the photos. It'll live forever. But I want to say something for the Mackenzie Milton at the Hula Bowl game. We were all excited to see that. We knew that it would be Mackenzie's last college appearance at the bounce house. We did not know until several months later that would end up being the final time he would take the football field, as far as we know. And the reception that he got from the fans who showed up, they showed up for him and they showed out for him. And to have that one final moment of him taking that field after all he's been through, I think was a really emotional moment, and certainly one I'll never forget. I did PA for that game. It really was a remarkable moment, and it was so satisfying to see him on that field once again. Eric, we've talked before about the significance of winning a regional, but that moment of finally breaking through, what was it like?
Euphoria. I mean, a lot of people that follow the program for a long time didn't think it would happen. It happened. The joy was incredible. You saw the reaction on the selection show. I mean, ESPN loved it. There was like one of the best reactions throughout the country. People were like, wow, that was awesome that they got to host. People were rooting for UCF to host, which was great. People love UCF softball, unlike other UCF sports a few years ago. It's amazing what happens. And look, they got a chance to host arguably the biggest NCAA championship that's been ever hosted on campus, ever, arguably. Softball NCAA tournament has exploded on television. It would be the equivalent of football if UCF ever gets to host a playoff game, or if men's basketball, they had the tournament and they held it on campus. That's how significant it was. And to host it, to finally say, yep, we made it, will never be forgotten.
Yeah. I mean, take your pick on that one. And we saw the video hosting the regional. I mean, that was, seeing that name pop up, like you said, I mean, the national reaction was really something.
Win it, and then to win it, then that basically, I mean, it'll be remembered it'll set the tone for future UCF teams, future players. It broke barriers that'll be long remembered for years and years.
Standard set.
Pretty much.
Kyle, UCF clinching that American Athletic Conference championship at home, cutting down the nets at home. Something that we've never gotten the chance to do in UCF women's basketball history. And we saw it. It was the culmination of so much emotion and so much effort, and it finally happened.
Absolutely. And kind of remark to some of Coach Abe's frustration after the loss in the second round of the NCAA tournament to Connecticut, and how some of that went. How all the Florida teams, 6 of them, I think it was playing, 4 of them were playing in Connecticut, I think, or maybe all 6 of them were, I don't remember. Excuse me. And then all of that frustration there. Imagine having to be at falling just short constantly of Connecticut because they're in the conference, and getting the monkey off of the program's back. Coach Abe was the last one to go up, get her piece of net, and for somebody who was always loath to look ahead to the next game, or to get too excited about what they were doing and getting hot, worried about being ranked and all that. Finally, she herself, after that game, would join her players in calling that program and that performance last year iconic.
Yeah. So there's your moment of the year nominees. Ryan O'Keefe in the Gasparilla Bowl, UCF winning the softball regional. Women's basketball clinching the American title at home. Softball actually getting selected to host the regional, and Mackenzie Milton's farewell at the Hula Bowl. Individual performance of the year, men's and women's. Here we go. We can roll through these a little bit quickly because we've already done. But I wanted to get the stats out there for this one too. First nominee, Ryan O'Keefe in the Gasparilla Bowl. Obviously the great moment, but man, what a game he had as well. Connor Stain in baseball against Ole Miss, which you talked about earlier, 10 Ks over 7 innings. Darren Green and Brandon Mahan combining for 53 points together against Michigan, including 8 for 8 from 3-point range. Men's soccer, Compoy's hat trick against Florida Gulf Coast was a remarkable performance. Only hat trick of the year for soccer. And men's tennis, Crawday and White beating the number 1 pair in the country in their first match together. Bryson, tell us more about the men's tennis, because that one I think kind of flew under the radar.
Oh yes, men's tennis. It was unfortunate in that they didn't exactly have the best year. You lost the best men's tennis player of all time in Gabe DeCamps. You kind of have to be able to reset a little bit. But one thing that this team did fairly well is in doubles, and Leighton Cronhay and Cooper White. Cooper White came in and first time ever in competition with Leighton Cronhay against the number 1 pair in the country against Ohio State, and they win it. I mean, it's one of those things where just the season may have been on the overall downturn, but that one performance, that one shining moment I think was a really great moment for men's tennis.
I was finally able to get the individual statistics for Ryan O'Keefe, rushing 4 carries, 110 yards, including a 74-yarder. And then receiving 7 catches, 85 yards, and 1 54-yard touchdown. I forgot how good that performance really was when you really think about it, a crowning achievement there. And then going back to the men's soccer hat trick as well, in a season where I think, again, I've mentioned this before, transitional season for UCF men's soccer. And by the way, we just saw their schedule come out too, and it's going to be a busy schedule in the American this year. But we talk about hat tricks, which are so rare. We got one earlier this season. Gosh, I'm messing this up terribly. Against Florida Gulf Coast, that 6-2 victory. Alessandro Campoy scoring the first two goals, and then the fourth goal that actually turned out to be the key. Luca Dorado also scored two himself, but forgive me, Campoy actually scored 4 goals in that game. Wow, you don't really see it that often. That's when we saw this offense would really be humming.
Oh, I remember I was talking to Eric about this because you look at Alessandro Campoy and you don't really see, he scored 4 goals all season last year again with Florida International. And he goes and scores 5 goals this season, and 4 of them come in this one game against Florida Gulf Coast. I don't care how good or bad the opponent is. You get this type of performance as big. The last time a UCF soccer player scored 4 or more goals in one game was Heike Ritmanen, UCF Hall of Famer, in 1998, and now someone else has finally done it, and it's this Alessandro Campoy, and it's 4 of the 5 goals he would get all season. Just he just went nuclear for this one game, and I love it.
Alessandro Campoy's hat trick versus Florida Gulf Coast. Men's tennis beating #1 doubles pair. Green and Mahan against Michigan, Connor Sane versus Ole Miss, and Ryan O'Keefe and the Gasbro Bowl, your men's individual performances of the year nominations. Don't forget that Andrew also mentioned the 56-yard kickoff return that O'Keefe had in that game. 3 huge plays from him in that game. Women's individual performance of the year, volleyball, McKenna Melville. We haven't heard her name a whole lot so far. We're about to. Against Florida State this year, career high 27 kills, career high 28 digs in the same match, a 5-set win over Florida State. Brittany Smith against Florida in that NCAA tournament game, showing out and pushing UCF past the Gators, career high in points for her. 2 track and field performances. Brittany Floyd breaking a 19-year-old heptathlon record in winning the heptathlon down in Miami, and Renaya Jones winning 3 golds in the AAC Indoor Championships. Women's golf, Tenrata Pidden setting a new 54-hole school record. And then finally, 2 softball performances. Kama Woodall's 11-inning performance against Michigan goes the distance, wins it for UCF, and Jada Cody's 2 home runs versus Villanova as well in the NCAAs in the opener of the Orlando Regional. I don't know what else you can say about McKenna Melville that hasn't already been said over the past several years for us. Kyle, Brittany Smith in that game against Florida, real quick, was in the zone.
Oh, to say the least. And, while she's usually seen as the least, I'll say least physical of the big post players, being Destiny Thomas and Masani Kaba as the other 2, she brought in that that Brittany bucket swag of hitting the outside shot and was just knocking people over. And this is the SEC. They're not known for timid basketball per se. And while they Florida did have some injuries going into it, I don't believe the front court was the biggest issue for that group. And Brittany, you can talk to her before the game. She was, looking to be a tougher matchup. And sure enough, she delivered something big. The only problem with the performance in question is, like we mentioned earlier, made the game, unfortunately, a lot less memorable than we might have liked for the first victory of the history of the program.
Yeah. I mean, it was it's like, dadgummit. Like, I wanted to pull up her box score real quick while we have the chance, because I want to just remind everyone she was 11 of 15 from the field, 4 of 6 from the line, 26 points, 6 rebounds in this game. An offensive force to be reckoned with, right when UCF needed it the most. Bryson, real quick, tell me about these 2 track performances here. Brittany Floyd breaking the 19-year-old heptathlon record, and Renaya Jones winning the 3 golds in the AAC indoors.
So we talked about Floyd breaking the heptathlon record before. She ended up winning competition. And I mean, I said it before, she just revolutionized what heptathletes or multi-athletes can do with this program. And that was kind of her moment where she broke out and said, it's her Renaya Jones moment, and she just, hey, my name's Brittany Floyd and I'm going to change this program. And she went and did that when she broke that 19-year-old record. It's so old, by the way, there isn't an exact date in the record book. It just says 2003 next to the athlete's name, Jamie Pugh. So, I mean, I don't know what else I can really say about that. I mean, it's hard to do multiple events at the same time, and Floyd just excelled in all of them. Just absolutely well done. For Renaya, it's funny, we haven't mentioned her a lot either. You talk about how we haven't mentioned McKenna, we haven't really mentioned Renaya a lot either. But Renaya continued to just dominate as far as her performances. And this was her first indoor season, by the way, because the last indoor season was canceled because of COVID-19, and that was Renaya's freshman year. So this is her first indoor season, and she goes to the American Conference Championship and sweeps the gold medal in all three of her awards. Major reason why UCF took the title in that division. So just dominant performance from Renaya there.
Eric Lopez, Jada Cody, 2 home runs against Villanova, kind of really set the tone for UCF in that regional, but I think that gets a little bit overshadowed by what Kama Woodall did against Michigan.
Well, real quick on Cody, no UCF players ever hit 2 home runs in a postseason game. It reminded me, shout out to Brian Murphy on this, my first Rays playoff game I attended in person. Evan Longoria, first 2 at-bats against the White Sox, 2 homers, set the tone for the Rays, rest playoff run. Same thing here with Jada Cody against Villanova. Kamal Woodall, it's the greatest pitching performance for a UCF pitcher in postseason history. 11 innings, we talked about it, the conditions, 181 pitches. You can actually listen to her talk about that herself if you go to the Black and Gold Banneret YouTube channel right now. Subscribe, like. You can hear my interview with Kamal Woodall and talks about that game in her words about that performance. That's all I need to say about that. That's called a plug, Kyle.
All right, we got a lot of nominees in this category. It's actually the biggest category we've got. McKenna Melville, 27 kills, 28 digs, Florida State. She was all over the place. I thought she had an evil twin who snuck into the gym at some point during that match. Brittany Smith, 26 points against Florida on 11 of 15 in the NCAAs. Brittany Floyd's 19-year-old, breaking the 19-year-old UCF heptathlon record. Renaya Jones, 3 goals in the AAC indoors. Pat Pidden's 54-hole record for women's golf. Kama Woodall, 11 innings, going the distance against Michigan. And Jada Cody's 2 homers against Villanova in the NCAA regionals. Those are your women's individual performances of the year. All right, guys, here we go. The 2 big awards, actually the 4 big awards, the 2 big categories. Athlete of the year, team of the year. Here we go. Male athlete of the year. We got 5 nominees. Ryan O'Keefe from football. Jeffrey Pena from baseball. Johnny Trevally from men's golf. Luca Dorado from men's soccer. Darren Green Jr. from men's basketball. Drew, we will start with Ryan O'Keefe. Make your case.
We talked about Ryan O'Keefe before, being the team leader in receiving yards, being 4th in rushing, and he's a wide receiver, so he's a do-it-all. And, his Gasparilla Bowl game numbers were just absolutely outstanding, had more total yards than any other player on the field, including both quarterbacks. The guy did it all, and he was the bridge that helped bring Mikey Keene into the spotlight, and I would say it was the singular linchpin of of a team that would have tanked versus a team that excelled to 9 wins. He was the guy. If he wasn't there, they wouldn't have made it.
I mean, the talent is right, and I can't wait to see what he's going to be able to do this coming season. We may see him again this time around. Bryson, Jeffrey Pena, and like we said, an up and down season for baseball. He was really a consistent performer.
Oh yes, for a hitting core that started the season off with a slow start, Jeffrey Pena was just hit the ground running and just did it from day one. He ended up setting a new program record for stolen base percentages, getting 67 out of 71. He stole over 20 bases in back-to-back seasons for the first time since Matt Ray did it in 2005 and 2006. He also got his 82 hits, was the most by a Knights player in one season since 2011 when Jonathan Griffin had 86. I mean, he was just the offensive linchpin. I mean, like we talked about, his performance in the Ole Miss game, he got the walk-off double to keep the team alive in the AAC tournament in that first semifinal game against Houston. Like this guy has absolutely been a linchpin into why baseball has managed to do as well as it has, despite all of the setbacks. The one constant is Jeffrey Pena is going to be fast and he's going to hit the ball.
The Johnny Travali and Luca, or actually, no, I want to go to Kyle and talk about Darren Green Jr. Transferred out, bummer about that, but was arguably the best performer for men's basketball this year.
I don't see what the argument would be for anybody else, Jeff, because at the end of the day, the one thing we constantly, Elo especially, bashed on this team about was the lack of consistency. But the one thing you could rely on during the regular season more than anything else is Darren Green handling business from beyond the arc and shooting the ball outside to get the two at long range as well. How many times I would be watching him or rather the team in general struggle, and then suddenly Darren Green comes up chucking it from Dan Marley range from the logo and stuff and popping a three. Listen, several times Coach Johnny Dawkins was asked if he has license to do that, and more often than not, the answer was essentially, to paraphrase and put it shortly, yes. Yes, he can. And I mean, I can't put it much better than that, but easily. I believe he was the team's leading scorer as well. I know that fans will be quick to point out that maybe his final game with UCF in the tournament against Memphis may not be as strongest. I would certainly grant that as well. But what he did for the team throughout the year, easily a huge deal.
I want to talk about Luca Dorado for men's soccer. In his sophomore year, boy, this guy has really blasted onto the scene for men's soccer. We talked about, Eric, we talked a lot about Cal Jennings and how great he was. Right. I think Luca Dorado could be this good. Second team All East region last year, unanimous first team all conference player in the American. 7 of UCF's first 16 goals. 10th nationally in goals with 13. This guy's got a really bright future ahead of him. Just 2 seasons in at a Montverde Academy. Boy, he's going to be impressive, and I think he could be he could be an All-American.
Took it to a different level. Will probably be a Player of the Year candidate for them to be successful this upcoming year, in their last year in the American, as we found out.
Yeah, in a much tougher American this year with some new teams coming in. And Bryson, I'll let you make the case for Johnny Travali of men's golf, who was the number 1 guy for them all season.
Oh, yes. This team does not make a regional without Johnny Travali. They don't do it without Teddy Tetak either. We mentioned that earlier. But Johnny Travali has always been the main leader on this men's golf team. He made his PGA Tour debut as well, playing in the RBC Canadian Open recently. But he ended up getting one of the top 10 lowest season scoring average in program history, a feat that he is familiar with. He has another in there, and you look, he's 3 over on the year. To compare that with his fellow players, Teddy Tetak is 9 over. The next, you have Clement Charmason at 36 over, and then Igor Roshenko at 37 over. Just without Johnny Travali doing what he does best, this team just simply does not make a regional.
All right. So your male athlete of the year nominees: Ryan O'Keefe from football, Jeffrey Pena from baseball, Johnny Travali men's golf, Luca Dorado men's soccer, Darren Green Jr. men's basketball. Let's go to the ladies. From women's golf, Tanrata Pidden. From track, Renaya Jones. From women's basketball, Diamond Battles. From volleyball, McKenna Melville. And from softball, Jada Cody. Eric Lopez, I want to start with Jada Cody. We talked about the record she broke. What makes her what in your case, in your opinion, makes her the best UCF athlete this year?
Well, she broke a 19-year-old record that was held by a Hall of Famer in Stephanie Best, which I didn't think would be broken, and she shattered it with 10 games less. Drove in 75 runs, 15 homers, helped her team win the regular season tournament title and super regional. No other player on this list we're going to talk about has done that. And she became the face of this program. catching Gianna Mancha while dominating offensively. She started as a catcher. She started as a third baseman. She started as a left fielder. She even had a start as second baseman. She was interviewed by Holly Rowe on ESPN. She transcends the softball program. To me, Jada Cody is the UCF Athlete of the Year.
I'm going to make the case for McKenna Melville, who, we talked about earlier, her performance against Florida State. Every year, and I did play-by-play for UCF volleyball this year several times. Every match, it was just, what's McKenna Melville going to do today? She's kind of become, dare I say, the Michael Jordan of UCF volleyball, where she has lapped the field in terms of what she has been able to prove on the floor. She's been an All-American all 4 years, but this past year, I thought that she reached an even greater level, and I think had to in certain cases this year, and enabled UCF to get all the way to the NCAA second round. And even despite all that, the fact that she was among the national leaders in kills per match, and was up in the top 5, actually led the country in several of those categories much of the time. I still think she has an even better season left in her as she heads into her final year, and she is very close. She has an opportunity heading into next season to be not just UCF's leader in kills all time, but to be top 10 all time in NCAA Division I history in kills, which is a heck of an achievement considering that she's played entirely in the rally scoring era. We are seeing greatness before our eyes, and we only get one more year of it. She, to me, is the best female athlete on campus at UCF. However, Kyle Nash, you have a case to make for Diamond Battles, don't you?
I don't have to say a whole lot. I can do it's Jordan 6 rings things, so to speak, if I wanted to. Conference Player of the Year, Defensive Conference Player of the Year, leading scorer on the squad, leader in steals, heart and soul, the face of the franchise. I love that Ela wants to bring up, well, hey, the audience sees more of this, but I will ask you the same thing that Diamond does up on the Jumbotron before every game. What's good? All the stuff she brings to the table, history is made, and it's not made without Diamond Battles out there taking the helm. Off air here, I said something about the post players running the show and being a bigger part of the women's team. Jeff corrects me and says they didn't need the post players. They got Diamond Battles.
We have Diamond Battles and they don't. Now we don't have Diamond Battles anymore, which makes me sad.
Unfortunately, but she does inspire athletes outside of her sport, men's and women's alike too. I might also add.
Was and truly beloved. And by the way, that the thing about the we have Diamond and they don't, shout out to Alex Funderburk who coined that. And now Bryson, I want to leave you with the last two who you covered extensively, and you can make the best case for Renaya Jones of track and field and Pat Pidden of women's golf. Renaya, maybe a little bit of a disappointing end to her season this past year, the NCAAs, but that should not take away from the fact that she was dominant both outdoors and indoors for UCF track and field this year.
You are absolutely right on that one. Renaya was an MVP in the indoor championship. Well deserved there, sweeping the golds. She also got 2 podiums in the outdoor championship and a fifth place as well, which still got her team points. She managed to, I think, while it wasn't to the highest of highs that last season was outdoor, she did still very much was the class of the field, I think, in terms of her times. She made it back to the final at Eugene in the 100-meter hurdles. And granted, it may not have ended the way she wanted to, but this season, I think, was a much more long and grueling grind for this woman, and doing both indoor and outdoor back-to-back for the first time. Now that she has it under her belt, though, I think she'll be fine. And let's not forget, she was also the opening leg in the 4x100 meter relay team, who also had a very good showing in Eugene. So Renaya is still being Renaya, and I'm excited to see what she does going forward. Now, Tanrata Pidden, she was the headliner of a very well done women's golf team this year. Her season scoring average 71.71 is the lowest single season scoring average in program history, beating her own record that she set herself back in the 2019 to 2020 season. She also managed to, of course, set the 54-hole record as well with a 200. The previous record was 203. She was Conference Player of the Year in the American for women's golf. I mean, she is just, I mean, again, we talked about how impressive Zoe Alo played as a freshman, but Tenrata Pitton is the absolute headliner of this team. Absolutely well done by her. And I'm excited to see what else she does for this program.
All right. Female Athletes of the Year: Jada Cody for softball, McKenna Melville for volleyball, women's basketball, Diamond Battles, Renaya Jones from track, and Pat Pitton from women's golf. All right, fellas, we have reached the apex. Let's do the big words. This is best picture. Okay. We've made it. Teams of the year. Let's start with the men. Football, baseball, men's golf. In a year that was, let's be honest, kind of rough at times for UCF men's sports, I want to make the case for, or actually, Drew, I'll let you make the case for football, because I think you kind of made it a little bit here, but just put a period on this for us.
This season is a success. You have a new coach come in. You dealt with turmoil of players coming and going with the transfer portal. This team dealt with turmoil with losing their starting quarterback, their top wide receiver, their top running back in the third game of the year. Did not break. They bent. They did not break and rallied behind a freshman quarterback en route to a 9-win season, winning 6 out of their last 7, including a big bowl win over Florida, almost 64,000 in attendance to watch that game. That's a successful season. In the game, in the men's sports, all having a rough go, that ends on a high note. You win against an in-state opponent in an area that you've never beat them before, which in football, and you have a positive momentum going into the next season.
I want to make the case for baseball here. Now, they finished with a 35-25 record. Not, spectacular, obviously, but I think there were a lot of parallels between football and baseball this year. The only difference, as Eric Lopez said earlier, was football got to cap off their season with a bowl win, and unfortunately, baseball didn't. But that doesn't prevent us from seeing some really great moments this year in baseball. They took, obviously, the 12-inning win over Ole Miss that we talked about earlier, beat Miami in a game earlier this year, swept South Florida to start the conference season. We saw some great pitching performances, but unfortunately, there was a rash of injuries during the conference play that really hampered this team's ability to sort of get some traction and stay toward the top, but they managed to fight their way back, get a favorable seed in the American Conference Championships, and after a tough loss to Memphis in the first game, won 3 straight games, forcing the second semifinal against Houston after a 10-inning thrilling victory, 9-8 over Houston, before they finally just ran out of gas, 9-6. But I think when you consider the adversity that Greg Lovelady and his team had to deal with, cold bats at the start of the year, next to no arms by the end of the year, they had no business getting as close as they could, one day away from playing for a conference championship and finishing 10 games over 500 and number 2 in the conference, or not number 2 in the conference, but finishing, I believe, what was their seed in the conference, Eric? I forget. Was it, or Bryson? It was, so they did finish 2. Okay. Yep. So, gosh, I mean, goes to show you, like, what an effort by this team.
If baseball had a bowl game, it's the same year.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I don't think that should be understated. Bryson, men's golf. Again, we've seen more successful seasons for men's golf, but they had some pretty key moments this year, didn't they?
Oh yes, yeah. It's the 1, 2, 3 finish at the Hartford Hawks invite. Oh my god, I'm saying oh yes.
It's now a meme. You keep that every time I ask there. Bryson,
Jeff,
he starts by saying oh yes.
Jeff, you are teeing me up to answer the question like that. It's the tee ups. I'm telling you, it's what you say. Okay, so on a lot of the memorable performances from men's golf this season came very early on. Highlights of which are the 1-2-3 performance that they had, three UCF Knights finished 1-2-3 individually, and the Hartford Hawks invite back in September. Like, absolutely amazing start of the year. The problem is they couldn't really carry it over into the spring. But that said, what I really think saved them this season was a 4th place finish in the American Athletic Championship, where they had 6 under par as a team. Without that performance, they're not going to make a regional, because the place that they were ranked in the golf stat, there was one team that was ranked ahead of them, Iowa, I believe, that did not make it to a regional as a team. UCF men's golf did. And I think that momentum, that last bit of oomph on the American Championship got them in. And after a season where they definitely didn't have the best of times, they managed to pull it out in the end and have an overall fairly successful season, I would say, or at least in terms of where they were.
Men's Team of the Year nominees: football, baseball, men's golf. And now we get to the big award of the night, Women's Team of the Year. This was a banner year for women's sports at UCF. How appropriate. 50th anniversary of Title IX actually happened today. As we record this on Friday, or it's now Friday since it's past midnight, but Thursday, June 23rd. And we have 5 teams that all had great years: women's basketball, softball, track, volleyball, and golf. Bryson, I want to start with you and give you a chance to redeem yourself one more time. Okay. Women's golf. They, again, like we said, just model of consistency under Emily Marin. Didn't win the conference, but got to the NCAAs again.
Indeed.
You almost did it again.
It's different terminology. It's different terminology, so it doesn't count. It's a different terminology, so it doesn't count. Yes. So this season, they were much more consistent in terms of the women's golf. Like Camille Banzette, Tenrata Pinnon, and Zoe Alo, and Jess Baker as well had her moments as well. They were a very consistent team that managed to get consistent results. Tenrata Pinnon became the 4th UCF women's golfer ever to get an individual win in a win, joining Ashley Holder, Liz Early, and Kristen Putnam. And Zoe Alo, of course, bursting onto the scene as a freshman. And then Camille Banzette having a good season as well. And Jess Baker, who is competing at the women's amateur, by the way, in Britain, and doing quite well there. She also had her moment. She was more hit and miss, but they did well. Anna-Laura Collado and Alyssa Lamoureux, unfortunately, in their last seasons, they had some good singles performances here and there, but they didn't really quite put it together. But the good news is that they score 4 or 5 when you play golf. So the women's golf, you're able to kind of if you have one player that has a bit of a bad performance, the rest of the team can pick you up. And that's what this women's golf team did, especially since they swept Player of the Year and Freshman of the Year in the American. So model of consistency, a well done year. And I can't wait to see what they do next year with the 2 transfers that they're bringing in.
Kyle Nash, I want you to talk about women's basketball and the historic season that they had.
Absolutely. I mean, even the players themselves and Coach Abe call it iconic. What they did to be seated higher than any other women's basketball program, getting 7th and doing all that and making the noise. We talked about how they made Simplicity of Florida. We talked about how they're foul shots away from beating the juggernaut that is the UConn program, and all the other things they did too as well, with Masdi Kaba scoring 1,000 points to cap her career, having a game where Alicia Lewis had 10 steals, all sorts of nights that were historic for the team and individuals as well. Coach Abe will go down in history for this year here on, and it's unfortunate for the fans that the program was completely gutted, even right down to their assistant. We came to find out.
Shout out, Megan. You'll do great.
Torn down to the studs, man. Oh, my God.
Hey, Kyle's still here, right? You're still here, right, Kyle?
Depends on you. No, I'm kidding.
Georgia's going to sign him away.
Hey, listen, I got Greek ancestry and they went to Athens. It's very confusing. I see why you're worried. But anyways, all of the performance that they have, such a versatile team, and just the fantastic story of what they were building on what was a successful year despite pandemic in 2020 and having to deal with all that. Just what a remarkable, iconic group that this women's basketball team was.
I'm going to make the case for UCF volleyball this year. 27-7, fourth consecutive conference championship. Victories over the likes of Clemson, Florida State, nearly beat Georgia. They beat Miami, plowed through the conference season. Over one stretch, this is really remarkable. Going back and looking at this, they went, 3, 4, 5, 6 matches without losing a set, then went 5 against Cincinnati, and then went another 6 matches without losing a single set. Made it all, won the conference championship, made it all the way to the NCAA second round where they came so close against UCLA, they could taste it in Pauley Pavilion. A year that almost flew under the radar. How good they were. They become so consistently awesome that we take them for granted. McKenna Melville, we can talk about her, from here on to the end. The job that Todd Dagenais, Jenny Maurer, Brian Doyen, and the entire staff at UCF have done is nothing short of remarkable. They continue to. They just. It's funny. John Evans and I went over to see a spring practice at UCF, and we said, and it was right around when softball was finishing up their conference season. So we caught a little bit of practice, talked to Todd, talked to Jenny for a little bit, and we asked, and he kind of said, "Hey, are you going over to softball?" He's like, "That might be the best team on campus." I'm like, "Due respect to softball, best team on campus is the one you're looking at right now. They've won 4 consecutive championships," and he's like, "Yeah, that's a good point." So my vote will, I'm very hard pressed. I'll let Eric Lopez try and talk me out of that by making the case for softball.
Oh, yes. That's very easy. Oh, yes. Ladies and gentlemen, with respect, by the way, in all fairness, let's again emphasize this. We did this at the Open. Everybody we've talked to about here tonight or this episode, amazing. Can we agree on that? Like, I hate it because some people are like, man, you're really knocking so-and-so. No, we're having some fun. Everybody was incredible.
In other years, these are teams worthy. Absolutely.
And Jeff, you made a great point about the 50-year anniversary. I mean, this is maybe the greatest year in women's sports.
We should do like the Peabody Awards, where you don't pick one winner. You simply decide, like, this team is worthy of the award or not.
By the way,
right?
I'm okay, and I know we don't do this, but I'm okay if there's ties here for awards in some of these, because I'm just going to say that, all right? So let me just get that out of the way. With that being said, hello, let's talk UCF softball, ladies and gentlemen, who transcended UCF. People that didn't follow UCF softball followed UCF softball. It started opening day. Boom! Walk-off win over Georgia. Boom! Walk-off win over Ole Miss. Boom! Beat Texas in Clearwater. Boom! Win the American Conference regular season title. Boom! Sweep South Florida in Tampa. And the best pitcher in the planet, Georgina Cork, who won Pitcher of the Year, by the way. Boom! Swept them and beat them in the championship game. Ruled their ass. Beat Wichita State 2 out of 3 on the road there. Win the tournament. Host a regional. Go in there and beat Michigan. Not once, but twice. Beat them as bad as Ohio State football beats Michigan every other year, basically, in football. That's how bad they beat them. And the only reason why softball didn't make the Women's College World Series is because they literally ran into the greatest softball team that's probably ever played in Oklahoma, which is better than any UConn women's basketball team ever. Like, Oklahoma can beat the Yankees right now. That's how good that Sooner softball team. If UCF gets anybody else in the draw in the Super Regionals,
I don't know about that.
They are in the World Series. They got better pitching than the Yankees, in my opinion. But at least a better coach than Aaron Boone. But anyway, sorry, Murph. I know the Yankees are having a great year. It's a historic team, and the thing was crazy to me. People followed it that weren't softball fans. The news people were at these practices. it really was. It was the closest thing that kind of similar to 2017 football. A lot of dramatic moments, memorable moments that people just got caught up in as time went on. So congrats to us. Thank you very much. Mic drop.
I think they're the favorite. I'm just going to say that right now. My favorite dark horse, however, Bryson Turner, I'm going to let you discuss, and that is track and field, who pulled the double.
They did indeed, Jeff. And I mean, I looked this up, by the way, as we were talking. This team, Dana Boone's talking about how she likes to make little bits of history with her program. They did that this season by setting 11 school records between indoor and outdoor track this year. 11. We talked about how Renaya Jones like broke out last year and she took so many bannies. It was amazing. But she brought the rest of the team with her this season. Latasha Smith, Adrian Adams, Ashira Collins came back as well. Brittany Floyd. I mean, the performances of Renaya continued, and it boggles my mind. And then, of course, doubling for the first time since 2013. Dana Boone has brought this program back to that time. And it took a while. It took almost a decade, but it was well worth it to see athletes like Renaya, Ashira, Latasha, and the relay teams are absolutely insane. And I think I would have a much better case to give for this team if the 4x400 relay team and Latasha Smith for the 400 made it to Eugene in the 400 meters, which didn't happen due to illness. I blame disease for the fact that we did not see these talented women in Eugene. I think they are going to be there next year. And I think Coach Boone is going to really push them to do that, but they still kept making school history. There is more than just Renaya to this track program. And this season absolutely proved it. 11 school records. And I'm excited to see if there's going to be more next time.
Your women's team of the year nominees, to wrap it up: women's basketball, softball, track, volleyball, and golf.
Very historic, by the way. This we might look back when you do the archives years from now. It's the greatest women's basketball team ever in UCF, the greatest softball team in UCF history. I think it's the second best track and field team ever, behind only 2013. And this track is super young. Maybe the greatest volleyball team in D1 era, Jeff. I mean, it's this and 19, right?
Maybe.
And golf. Oh, by the way, golf was real strong too. Got to another regional. We're looking at some historic.
Got to another regional. Everyone was like, This
is a historic year, and I would steal Kyle's word, iconic, perhaps even to describe it.
Hey, with this,
so we finally made it.
Hey, women's tennis was solid too. Literally, almost every women's sport would have what they call a exceptional season. It's absolutely insanity.
Except rowing.
Wow.
I'm still mad about that.
Oh God! Thanks for getting us to the end.
Drew's mad. He wanted to go to rowing in Sarasota. That's what he wanted.
Here's how this is going to break down. All right. So now you've heard all the nominations. You've heard all of our cases for them. We are going to post 2 awards every day with these nominations. All right. You, the fan, get to vote on them on blackandgoldbanneret.com. Make sure you vote on each of them. We will also vote on the awards individually. And then you, the fans, whoever wins the fan vote will get 1 vote. And if there is a tie for a vote, the fan vote, whoever gets the fan vote, that serves as the tiebreaker. So make sure you follow us at UCF Banneret _SBN, Facebook.com/blackandgoldbanneret, and of course, blackandgoldbanneret.com, your home for UCF sports on the SB Nation Network. It's going to be a busy couple weeks for us. We're in the dog days of summer, but we're going to blow out the bannies this year, and it's totally happening. So thank you so much for bearing through us. Gentlemen, thank you for your incredible insight, the arguments. We tried to get through this as quickly as we could. There are so many awards. There are so many people that we want to honor and thank for this wild season that we had at UCF. We just couldn't. I know it took a while, but you know something? It was worth it. All right.
You don't rush perfection, Jeff.
No, you don't. It has been, indeed, as Bryson Turner has said, a historic year. So for all of us here at Black and Gold Banneret, for Eric Lopez Elo on Twitter, for Kyle Nash, the Student of the Game, the SOTG on Twitter. For It's Bryson Turner on Twitter, Bryson Turner. And for Statboy Drew on Twitter, Andrew Glukoff. I am Jeff_Sharon, also Jeff Sharon on Twitter, Jeff_Sharon on Twitter. I am Jeff Sharon saying thank you so much for listening. This has been the Black and Gold Banneret 2022 award nomination show. A couple of weeks, we will announce the winners on blackandgoldbanneret.com. Until then, folks, enjoy your weekend. Don't forget to vote. Keep an eye on us for all these awards as we go. Thank you again, folks. Enjoy. Have a great weekend.